Call the meeting of the Town Council for January 3rd, 2011 to order. Please rise. Councilor Dolan, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for our men and women serving us both here and abroad. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, our first item on the agenda is public comment. So this is public comment for not related to the budget. This is just our general public comment. I'd like to call Meg Seymour, our town clerk, forward. She has something she'd like to read.
Good evening, thank you. Meg Seymour, Town Clerk, Tax Collector. Just want to give the information out for our town positions that will be coming up for this town election. Filing period this year will be from January 19th through January 28th at the Town Clerk's office during regular business hours, which is 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. You must be a registered voter prior to January 19th if you're not currently already a registered voter. The positions that we have available up for elections is we have 2 council positions. It's a 3-year term for each. We have 3 budget committee positions, which are 3-year terms. We have 2 positions for the trustees of the Leach Library, which are 3-year terms, and 1 position for the trustees of the trust fund, which is a 3-year term as well. Anybody have any questions? That's the positions we have. It is already posted on the town website, and it will be up on the cable as well, and I'll be sending that out to the newspapers so they can publish it as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Does anyone else of the public have any public comment that they'd like to say at this time? And keep in mind, we will go into a public hearing where you will have the chance to comment on the budget. Sir? Could you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Dennis Martin, 182 Pillsbury Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire. I was here about 5 months ago, and it was about the private ambulance situation, and I asked back then what was being done about it. In the minutes here, at that time, Chairman DeMarco said that said at the July 15 council meeting that they asked the town manager to investigate it, and it is something that we are looking at. Town manager Karen said he has nothing new to report at this time. Town manager, do you have anything to report at this time about private ambulances?
Is this more appropriate to bring up during the budget
Well, it is a public
portion?
comment, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but is it more appropriate to bring up during the budget when we get to the...
I'm just asking for a public comment. I wanted to find out if anything has been done. I've been here, 5 months ago?
Mr. Chairman?
And nothing, I haven't seen anything on public access when I watch it on TV talked about. Nothing's been talked about, so I just want to know.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the town manager compiled a report, presented something to us. If you deem it appropriate, I personally would be comfortable with him commenting on it.
Dave?
Okay, well, yep. We completed a cursory review about 2 months ago, looking at our staffing levels, and we all came to the conclusion that if the town decided to stop transporting patients and turn it over to a private ambulance service, that would not reduce the number of personnel we have working in the fire department per shift. Based upon that analysis, we took a look at what the town receives annually for ambulance fees based upon what it costs us to maintain and purchase those ambulances. And based upon that analysis, that the town, it does not cost the town any money on a negative basis to operate the ambulance service. In other words, the town takes in more than it invests into its ambulances and its equipment for those ambulances and maintenance. Now, I can send you a copy of that report if you like.
Yeah, I will. I'll take it.
Sure.
And so you're saying there's no tax impact versus a private ambulance company?
What we looked at is we looked at our operations here. We also did a survey of a number of communities of similar size throughout New Hampshire. And what we'd be losing is we'd be losing the cost to purchase and maintain our 3 ambulances, and we'd also be losing the revenues which accrue from ambulance building.
Have you looked into any other towns around where you have bids that you've looked at or anything like that to see how they did it?
We have a survey, I want to say about 20 communities of similar size in New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts.
The reason why I'm here, too, is I do have some bids that were given at Manchester. One is Care Plus, one is Rockingham. Care Plus is on a CD, and plus I have the RFD. The RFD for Manchester, now this may not apply here, but it gives you an idea. On page 18, talks about how Manchester, for the next 2 years, will get $300,000 plus a year to run the 911 system. There's no way that any ambulance company, through the taxpayer's dollar, okay, can do it with no tax impact. That's one reason why this Manchester went after that. You're certainly welcome to this stuff to take a look at if you want it. I brought it here for that particular reason.
We have looked at information, and our information, which you will receive, will show that Manchester is pretty much the only community that has that kind of arrangement in which they receive a significant payment from the ambulance provider to have the exclusive right to transport patients within their city limits.
You're right, but it's based on volume and calls, and any company that comes in wants to make money. But if you bring in an ambulance company which costs you no ambulance costs, no labor costs, no insurance costs, so forth and so forth, there's no way that's going to cost the taxpayer an impact on their property or anything. It's a free thing. It's basically, some companies come in and say, we'll give you 0. In this case, AMR came in and said, we'll give you $300,000 plus a year for the next 2 years, and that covers the 911. So you might have not taken that in consideration, the 911 impact, too, the 911 that's going to be paid through contracts.
So, sir,
If I can suggest, I'll send them a copy of the
Yeah.
report. and
Do you
any
want a
questions,
copy of
let me
this
know.
stuff?
I don't need that. We have that from our fire chief, received all those documents from member
Manchester's,
communities.
Care
I believe
Plus,
so.
Rockingham?
Who's chief? Do you need that information, Chief McCaffrey?
The only one that I didn't receive would have been a preemptive one from Care Plus to Manchester.
To the city.
Right,
For
that
the-
was not available through the only ones I have are the contracts that are currently under contract, not the proposals to them.
Okay. Do you want a copy of this?
Sure.
I'll give it to you. I'll bring
Yeah.
it by the station. I'll give it to you now, and you can rip it off and give me back later.
so, Mr. Martin, if you could give Dave your email address or your
Yep.
address, and he'll get that information to you, so you could see the report that we saw, and then you could give that to the chief. And
Is there any consideration about doing that at all? Is it going to be a talked-about issue? Are we going to bring it to the public's attention?
it's not on the, under consideration for this budget because of what,
But we can look at it as a consideration down the road, so the public is aware of what David's talking about and what I'm talking about, so they can make that decision? You know what I mean? In other words, let's educate the public what's going on with this, either for or against. You see what I'm saying?
well, get the report from Dave and give that to the chief, and then, you'll have the information that we have, and then, if you decide to come before the council again and want
Well, I'll
to
be
research
back.
it further, then that's certainly your right to
I
do so.
think what Mr. Martin's asking is, was that presented to us in public, and it was?
It was presented in public?
Yes.
Yes, it
When was that done?
A couple of months.
Do you know what
I don't-
minutes would have been? I'll look at the
Ac-
minutes.
Actually, we can probably ask our administrator over here to take a look for you, sir.
Okay, so I can get the minutes, as long as I get an idea what,
The minutes are all online, so.
I understand, but what meeting of the minutes was
Well-
that discussed? Do you guys have an idea?
Dave would have an idea based on when you sent us that.
Yeah.
You would?
You look in your emails, but Mr. Martin, just to let you know, we asked Dave for that information prior to you even bringing it up. We expected him to give us the report. He did give us the report, and it was given in public. So just to kind of level set, we actually wanted to pursue this. We got the information. It's not currently under consideration for this budget, but we asked for it because we wanted to consider it. It was not swept
Okay.
under the rug in any way, shape, or form.
And is that an agreement with everybody on the council that was discussed and so forth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there, we're still in public comment. Does anyone else in the public have anything they'd like to speak about? And this is not the budget hearing. This is just any general public comment. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing, and I'll need a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of going into public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and we've 5-0 to go into public hearing. Our first item under public hearing is ordinance 2010-06. Can I have a volunteer to read, please?
Sure. Just going to get to it.
Sure.
Ordinance 2010-06 is an amendment to the zoning ordinance to clarify the number of temporary signs permitted on a lot and clarify requirements for the MUC subdistrict. Whereas the building division within the Community Development Department identified an area of the zoning ordinance requiring clarification regarding temporary signs, and whereas planning division staff also identified an oversight in the development and adoption of the MUC subdistrict, which requires that the MUC subdistrict be added to the sign section of the ordinance. Whereas the planning board has recommended that the town council act favorably upon this request, now therefore be it ordained by the town council of the town of Londonderry that sections 3.11 of the town zoning ordinance be amended, specifically subsections 6.3.8 and 6.4.3, to indicate that one temporary sign is permitted per lot. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion by the council? Or is there a presentation, Dave, first, by town staff?
Richard Canuel is in attendance. Should there be any questions? Or
Okay.
should the council require additional information?
Richard, do you want to, where are you? There, you just want to come up just in case there's any questions,
October 31st.
please? Any questions from the council regarding the proposed changes to the zoning ordinance? Mike?
Yeah, just, Richard, based on the way I read this, it looked like it was an administrative clarification of something that should have been in the code previously, and this is a way to correct it? Is
Well,
that-
that's sort of a two-part amendment. Simply when the mixed-use commercial zone was added to the ordinance, the provisions for signage just was not included as part of that. So that's to correct that. The other part of that is to include an additional period to allow temporary signage advertisement for our commercial uses.
Does that addition, is that addition consistent with other parts of the sign ordinance, or are you allowing temporary signs just in that district now versus other districts?
No, that's in general. That's temporary signage for any use, commercial, residential, industrial, across the board.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, we are in a public hearing, so does anyone from the public have a question regarding ordinance 2010-06? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the council. Any final comments or questions? Okay, I'll accept the vote. All those in favor of ordinance 2010-06 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative. And ordinance passes 5-0. Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the fiscal year 12 town budget. And Dave, did you have any opening remarks?
The town's schedule calls for 2 public hearings on the proposed budget. This evening is the first public hearing. Our second public hearing is scheduled for Thursday, February 3rd, which is 2 days after the February 1st deadline for the receipt of any citizen's petition. Your original budget calendar envisions a number of actions. One is to receive public comment on the draft budget as is currently presented to the public. Also, the council needs to make a decision this evening whether to schedule a hearing on any bonds to be presented to the public at the March, I believe that would be the 8th town meeting, the Tuesday session. The preliminary budget included a $1.0 million road reconstruction bond. I think it's the 4th in a series of bonds to upgrade town roads in the community. The council also, at its next meeting, January 17th, needs to develop a position on its final budget to be presented at the last public hearing on February 3rd. So that's the process. As far as any adjustments, there are a couple of adjustments in the budget for the council's consideration. One is that last week we received notification that the estimate for the highway block grant will have an increase of $17,036, which means that the highway block grant for FY12 has been estimated at $606,632. On the expense side, we had difficulties transcribing the Recreation Department budget. There was an error, and that budget should be $136,624, which is an increase of $8,075, which brings our recommended general fund budget to the council of $25,705,950. The other change, and it's for notification purposes, that, as the council knows, staff, particularly Andre Guerin, has been making monthly presentations with the council on our economic development initiatives in the community. And one of those initiatives includes the application to the U.S. Economic Development Administration for a matching grant to fund the sewer extension project to Pettingill Road. If successful, the town would receive 50% of the project cost. The town's 50% share will be funded through its sewer special revenue fund, and the town's share would be $1.895 million. So our recommendation is to increase the sewer special revenue fund budget for FY12 to include that amount. Therefore, the total sewer budget should be $4,579,758. What the vision is that as Pettingill Road is developed, first of all, anticipating we receive the grants and the construction does proceed, as Pettingill Road is developed and the town receives access fees from developers in that location, those funds will be placed in the sewer special revenue fund to replenish their undesignated fund balance in that fund. So those are the three changes we have for council consideration at this particular time.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Okay, so there's a lot of information in the budget, and I want to go about this in a methodical method so we're not all over the place with different parts of the budget. So Dave has provided me with a list of all the high-level areas, basically department by department of the budget. So what we'll do is we'll go through it section by section. I'll go through the council and the budget committee, then we'll go to the public, take any comment, and then we'll move on to the next section. So we'll start with overall comments about the fiscal year 12 budget, maybe not related. People may have comments in general that are not related to any particular individual department. Then we'll go to the community development budget, which is planning and economic development, building and zoning. Then go to public safety, which is police and fire. Public works, which includes both public works as well as solid waste. General government, which is several categories, finance and administration. And then community services. And then finally, we'll go to the special revenue funds, and as well as things like expendable maintenance, capital reserve, and then the master plan non-capital reserve. So that'll be the general approach that we take.
Would like to make a public comment in regards to the budget.
Okay, yeah, we'll go around, and in the beginning, we'll have any comment on the budget in general from the public, so, or from the council and the budget committee first. So is the council okay with that approach?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll begin with general comments about the overall budget, so not particularly related to any individual component of it, but in general. Comments from the council. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment about the tone of commenting. I think, at least for me, I've entered for the past couple of weeks and now for the next couple of weeks into a period of listening. And I have heard a wide spectrum of opinions. I've heard from some folks that we haven't cut enough. I've heard from some that we've cut too much. I've heard from some that we've cut the wrong things and should be cutting other things. I've heard some appreciation for the lean budget that's on the table in its proposed with its proposed numbers thus far. And there've been many strong emotions in the comments that I've heard. One recent comment was that we've prioritized dollars over safety. It was an emotional comment, but I will say it was polite and respectful, although emotional. I will say that a small minority of comments that I've heard have included, unfortunately, name-calling and some rude and ugly comments. I will say that those comments have exclusively come from anonymous bloggers. In my opinion, this is a recent cultural phenomenon that lends itself to ill-mannered and rude comments, and it's very unfortunate. I'm a proponent of a policy of treating each other with dignity and respect, and that strong disagreements are still possible without allowing our public conduct to suffer. I will say I'm pleased to see so many of you here tonight to comment on our proposed budget, as I'm here to listen. And I assume none of you are here anonymously. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tom. Well put. Any other comments or questions from the town council regarding the general budget? Nope. I just had a couple words I wanted to say. Tom actually covered several of my points, so I won't belabor you with repeating those. One of them, though, was related to, at the conclusion of our budget hearings, we spoke with the Budget Committee spoke, and they indicated their support of our flat budget. However, they wanted to see us put I believe it was $13,000 back into the general support budget that where basically goes to other organizations, sometimes referred to as charitable donations organizations like Red Cross and so forth. They went through a due diligence interviewing these various organizations, as was the direction given to them by the town council in the past, and since the town council hadn't changed that direction, it stands as it was. So myself, as one town councilor, I'd like to honor that and see us put that back and come up with that 13,000 someplace else. It represents less than 0.5% of our nearly $26 million budget. So, other than that, I think Councilor Dolan really hit the nail on the head. There's going to be a lot of emotion related to this budget. Obviously, this is a tough time. A lot of work went into getting us to this point. Town manager with his staff. A lot of countless hours of effort went into getting us to this point, and it wasn't easy to do, so I think it's commendable, the work that they did, and I just wanted to pass along my personal thanks to the town staff that worked on it to get us to this point. So, any other comments from the council? Councilor Brown?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but just to, again, level set, and Dave, I'll rely on you to straighten me out if I'm wrong. The original budget message, which is your presentation of the council, was given to us on November 15th, and it was done based on the direction that the council had previously given you to come to us with a budget that would have a flat tax rate on the town side. So you presented that initial take on how to meet that goal, which we have a consensus on right up through tonight. We then subsequently had a budget workshop on November 29th. The council had entertained some feedback prior to that meeting about a couple programs that some community members felt strongly about, and at that meeting, the council came to a consensus to direct you to find $137,500 in other parts of the budget to put an SRO back into the school system and also fund the crossing guards. So entering this evening, so you then presented on December 6th an alternate budget presentation to us accomplishing that. And as we enter tonight's meeting, we are looking at that particular budget with an SRO funded in the schools and the crossing guards funded, okay? Right, so I just kind of wanted to bring us to that point, because there are still folks in the community who believe that those two things are not in the current budget, and they are. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Members of the Budget Committee, any comments on the budget in general that you'd,
I just appreciate the due diligence that's gone into this process from the get-go to the earlier points. A lot of scrubbing went on, very difficult and challenging tasks on the budget, and I really appreciate what the town manager has done, as well as all the feedback and input that we've had.
I think that pretty much says it all.
It was very helpful. I think we've come to a very reasonable budget, given all the inputs at this point in time, and just look forward to moving forward with the process.
okay, thank you, Ted. Okay, and that's probably a good reminder that if you have a cell phone, including ones that play the theme from The Godfather, my favorite movie, would you please put it to
I actually didn't mind
vibrate?
that, so.
Godfather.
So any members of the public have any comments on the overall budget, not for any of the specific ones? If it's for one of the specific departments, we'll certainly be able to get to you. Sir? Richard, if you could just say your name and address for the record.
Know the drill. Richard Valinsky, Hall Road. The reason I'm here tonight has to do basically with funding, not any particular, I know where it's going, but that's kind of irrelevant. It was kind of just brought up. It seems that once again, we're going to be using some non-taxpayer dollars to fund portions of the budget with money that the taxpayer hasn't put in there. In particular, I guess it's the SRO offices. So you're going to be taking the money from the Cable Studio Reserve Fund. And once again, don't understand why you're doing this. I know that we're in a tight budget. I know things are tough out there. But that's a self-funding entity. It's a self-funding entity that you're not required to pay into, such as your taxes on your houses, which you have to, or you lose your house. So why money is being taken from there is beyond me. We had a problem with that being done in the past, and I think it was '99, the council voted to put all 5% of the franchise fee into the cable studio so they could self-fund. As we all know, we had the fiasco when the cable studio was built, that we had to go to the taxpayers for something they shouldn't have been responsible for to get the money, because the money had been taken out of that account. It was split, I think, 3-2 at the time. 3% of the 5 went to the town, I think 2% went to the cable studio. If that hadn't been done, if it had been left self-funded, we wouldn't have had to take money from the taxpayer to build the building at $300,000 and an additional $75,000 after that. So I want some rationale as to why we're doing this. I know you're trying to save positions on this town side, and just so people know, I'm not a big volunteer at the cable studio. I'm not even sure if I'm still on the volunteer list. It's not taxpayers' money. Why are the people who have cable supplementing the budget? I mean, this has been going on for years, and I just want to lay this out here, what I have. About 6 years ago, we spent $70,000 to put cameras in 2 rooms and a control rack. I think the cameras went in the cafeteria, 221, and maybe the music room. There was a $20,000 grant given to the high school. There's been $7,500 a year for approximately the last 8 years that has been given to the school district. And I believe for the last 3 years, you've taken $40,000 out of the reserve fund for the cable studio and put it into the general fund. If you do the 105 that you're looking at in the $65,000 position, you're looking at close to $450,000 worth of money that has been taken from a self-funding entity to supplement the budget. Not good planning, because that can live on its own without being touched. I'm under the impression, from what I've seen, that the federal government's looking to do away with franchise fees. May not happen. If the money is left in this account and you can build it up, if those go away, what are you going to fund the cable studio with? Well, at least if their money is left in the account, they have 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how much money is in at the time, which will give us time to plan for how that is going to be funded. But if it keeps getting robbed, and quite frankly, I know it comes to pennies on the tax rate and all that. It's the idea behind it. Why am I, as a cable subscriber, being required, when you take the money out of this account, to supplement people who don't have cable, who are also taxpayers for town services, whatever they may be in whatever department that the money goes to? The other reason is, how are we getting the money out of this reserve fund? If in '99, the 5% was voted by the council and designated to be left in there for the cable reserve fund, why is it even being touched? You don't go into the ambulance reserve fund or the capital reserve fund to take money out to do it, as far as I know. There's $900,000, I guess, in the conservation that you can't get to, but that is taxpayers' money. If you're going to start robbing reserve funds, rob ones where the taxpayers actually put the money into it. Don't take one that's self-funded, that has nothing to do with the tax rate. It doesn't make sense. Let's get rid of a position there that's self-funded to save positions on the taxpayers' end. Find the money somewhere else. I know there's hard decisions to be made in this economy. Here's the way it is. People are losing jobs. People are taking jobs for less money. If we have to make reductions, we got to make them. Start with what your basic needs are in the town and fill the budget with what it's going to cost to do the basic needs. It seems like we say, okay, we had 26 million last year. We're going to level fund it, and let's fill it in from there. Somebody's got to explain to me why we're taking money out of from a fund that isn't funded by the taxpayer. It's not a tax, it's a fee. It's a fee I have a choice to either get cable or not, unlike my taxes, where I don't have a choice, unless you want to give me one, and I'll choose not to. All right?
Mike?
Yeah, I just want to make a correction. Mr. Belinsky at the start said that we were funding the SRO and crossing guards from the cable studio. That's incorrect. Dave's original presentation on November 15th to meet our flat tax goal included the cable department. In order to meet our subsequent consensus to fill an SRO and the crossing guards, he came back with the following to do that, not the cable studio. The non-union positions would forego a raise for the second year in a row for $17,000. We would eliminate a clerk's position for $40,525. We would further reduce the social services budget by $13,475. Police department would come up with $21,197 in additional reductions in operating expenses. Additional $30,000 allocated from undesignated fund balance. $7,500 reduction in information technology budget, and an additional $7,803 from library. The cable department had nothing to do with the SRO and the crossing guards. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
The cable discussion is a separate one, and if Mr. Belinsky wants to discuss it as part of a separate item, I think you should decide whether we continue this or not.
Yeah, and there is,
I don't care where the money goes. I want to know why it's being taken. It's not taxpayers' money. That's a funding issue for the general budget. Where you use it is irrelevant to me.
Well, my clarification was correct, right?
It may be, I don't know.
It's
To me, and
absolutely
I also said
100%
later
correct.
when I was talking that, wherever it was used, I don't care where it's used. My whole thing here is, why are you taking non-taxpayer money to fund something that should be funded from the taxpayers? You're going to put them in a position, should any of this legislation go through, where they're not going to have the money. It's like people have used their home equity loans as a piggy bank, hoping for raises, and now they don't have a job. Leave them alone. Let them be self-funded.
Dave, can you clarify, my understanding is that the cable fund is funded through the fees, but that is, we are authorized to use that money, unlike other capital reserve funds. Is that correct?
That's right. There's no legal restriction either at the state, federal, or local level to prohibit the use of those funds for other purposes. And I mean, Rich hit the nail on the head several times, as during these economic times, we've got to look at all our resources which are unencumbered. We've got to try to prioritize those services we can fund, and that resulted in the recommendation to transfer funds and use those to support some of the general government services. Also, I don't have the list with me, but I certainly can provide it, is that a vast majority of the communities in New Hampshire which do receive cable franchise fees do not use any of those for public access purposes and actually do put them in the general fund. So what we're proposing here is not unique in the state.
Okay, well, and I'm not going to argue whether it is or isn't, because I don't know. I don't live in those other towns. I don't care what they do. In 99, the council voted, when it was split 3-2, to take the 5% and leave it in the cable fund for the cable studio. And as far as I know, there's never been a vote to do otherwise. So basically, their vote meant nothing, and we're going to do what we want. And you're making you're making something that is not paid for by the taxpayers and using it to pay for taxpayers and supplementing. You're supplementing the businesses that would have to pay. You're supplementing the people that don't have cable, that may have Dish or don't have anything. It's not right. It's morally not right to use that money for this purpose. I have a, and I want the people out there to know, if that's what you're going to do, and you probably will, so be it. But explain to me why you're using non-tax, regardless of the fact that others say, why are you using non-taxpayer money to pay stuff that should be paid by the taxpayers? That's it. And I haven't seen anybody come up with a reason other than, well, we can. Well, I don't care if you can. There's a lot of things you can do. Doesn't make it right. How are you going to fund it if the laws are changed and you can't collect the franchise fees and you've used the money? Now you're going to have to go back to the people, and people are going to have to pay for something that they didn't even want either. Leave it alone. Find the money somewhere else, or you have to make reductions. It's that simple. It's not good planning. It's short-sighted, it's a Band-Aid, and it's the wrong way to do a budget. And I'll leave it at that because I know you'll do it anyway.
Thank you. Okay, we're still accepting public comment on the overall budget. If you have comments on a specific area of the budget, please wait for that section. Anybody else from the public, sir? Dan, if you could say your name and address for the record, please.
Dan Bouchard, 8 O'Connell Drive, Londonderry. I just want to make a general comment that I served on the Budget Committee for 3 years, and I know it's a tough job what you guys are going through on the council and on the Budget Committee. And I would like you to ask yourself this question: how are people doing in our community? In today's paper, there were 4 listed notices for foreclosures in this town. When I was working at the police department, I was involved a lot at Christmas time, helping out families. So I made a call today to a friend of mine who still does it. And I said to her, how many families have we helped out in Londonderry over Christmas who are struggling? Over 140 families were helped out. Over 500 individuals were helped out. Keep that in mind when you're working on this budget. There's a lot of people in this town struggling. And I'll talk on other areas later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Al, name and address, please.
I'm going to make this real quick. It's short and sweet. Actually, Dan took a few things out.
Can you give us your name and address, please?
Oh, Al Baldasell, 41 Hall Road. It was right on the money here in the last speaker here, and the reason is because if you take a look at the residents in our town, a lot of retirees, they're not getting any raises in the last 2 years now in Social Security. If you take a look at military retirees, there's no pay raises, no cost of living raises there. If you take a look at many, and I can go, if you call my house right now, you're going to see I can't even get to my messages, and that's the reason why I'm here, because some people don't want to come and speak, or they feel intimidated, or they're scared to come and talk, on their taxes and other stuff. But we've got a problem here. Many towns, and I'm proud of some of them, standing up and putting a freeze. Rather than laying off people, they're freezing, or they're cutting some of the hours on services before you put a worker, because it's a shame, as the ones who get laid off is the worker. The scare tactics come out, all the police, the firemen, and then all of a sudden, all the management, everyone to get the big raises, and then the people that are working crew are the ones that really don't get much of a raise. And then that raise that they get go in the tax rate that goes up every time. So I'm asking you, take a look at maybe a freeze across the board, and I'm hoping the school is looking at the same thing. Maybe we won't have to lay off anyone if we do the freeze. I agree with the franchise. I'm paying a tax in one area, okay, and you're going to take my money and put it in another area. I wish you would renegotiate probably and cut that franchise, because the cable studio is a win-win for the town. I mean, it is a way of, for a lot of kids in the town to be able to get that program going, and I didn't mind paying the franchise fees. But I know if I'm paying a tax here and you're taking my tax there and putting it somewhere else like the governor did, you know, you're taking from Peter to pay Paul. You know, I really don't get it. I would rather pay what we got going on there, take the excess, plus, you know, where there's money in the account, anything above and beyond, I'd support that going to general fund. But at least keep it running and, you know, where the kids at the school and the community can use that cable studio to produce shows and other stuff.
Okay, Councilor O'Keefe?
That's just to address what Al was just saying. In regards to your comment, the reason we tried to craft this budget the way we have was we had the town manager go to the unions and ask them if they would take a one-year freeze. All the unions said no. So this is where we're at because the unions didn't want to take a pay freeze.
I'm glad you said that, because then I have no problem with laying people off then. If they do not want to work with the taxpayers here.
We're not doing this for emotion. I'm just
Okay, no,
stating
right.
factually, this is where we're at because of it, okay?
Right. There are no sacred cows, okay, on the table here when you're looking out for the taxpayers of the town, because you are elected just like I am by the taxpayers. I've got to make some, you know, seriously votes coming up here soon on the budget for the state. But the bottom line is, I don't look at your police, your fire. I look at what's in the best interest of the taxpayers, at the same time maintaining services to protect the people. That SRO, I have kids in the school, and my kids are all out of school. I can tell you right now, my kids used to come home and tell me, Dad, you wouldn't believe what goes on in that high school, okay, or out at the park. I'm a big supporter of that SRO in that high school, okay? I don't know what the cost of that is, but I know, just like me being in many other countries, when you build a trust in kids, they come and let you know where the enemy is. Just the same thing in the school system, in the high school. That SRO that's there builds trust and confidence in those kids. He becomes their friends. They let them know. Look at the papers on all the drug busts that happen in our small bedroom community. So think about that when you're on some of these decisions. You got some tough decisions to make, but the bottom line is there is no sacred cows, and if the unions, I have no mercy for them then if they don't want to take a cut.
Okay, and you know, just to make sure you understand too, that even if all the collective bargaining units in town took a pay freeze or agreed to that, that still wouldn't have gotten us to where we needed to get to.
Correct.
So that isn't the,
May I ask you, Mr. Chairman, how much of a difference would it be if they did take the freeze? How much money are we talking, 60, 80,
I don't think it was
200,000?
even half of it, if I don't
I
remember.
think it was 200, no, almost 300,000?
Dave, do you know that off?
To my recall, Al, I think of the $1.3 million needed to adjust from the proposed budget, about $500,000 allocated to contractual increases. So there was $800,000.
So there was
delta.
still 800,000
Okay.
that we still would have had to have found elsewhere.
But will you still get to keeping an SRO? Will you still be getting to keep some of these positions that are in the streets, the police officers, if you did that? Some of the positions will still be in place. Because all I keep hearing is scare tactics going on around. Oh, we're going to lose this, we're going to lose that.
I don't want to speculate on,
Right.
you know, if, you know, what if someone won the lottery and gave $2 million to the town? I
Right.
don't want to speculate on
I agree. What if
that.
people in hell got ice
But the
water,
point
who
is
knows?
that wasn't the silver bullet.
Right.
It wasn't, so.
Okay, I just want to make, with that, we're looking, I know, I tell you, the budget, I think you all, you know, you got some tough decisions to make, and it's not going to be friendly, and I agree, Tom, I get many calls, you know what I mean, name calling and threats and other stuff, and, but the bottom line is, there's no sacred cows, and we've got to do what we got to do to keep people in our town and not force them out. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask people in the audience to please keep your voices down? If you have to have a conversation, take it outside while someone from the public is speaking. Does anyone else from the public like to comment on the overall budget before we go into our first departmental budget?
Mary Soares, 2 Gale Road. Well, I have several addresses, it would appear. Anyway, I would like to agree with the people who have spoken about taking the money from the cable department and putting it into the general fund, only because I agree it's a Band-Aid. It's not unlike what the state has done, taking funds from one sector to cover funds from another and then coming up short in the long run. So I would appreciate it if you would consider removing that and leaving it in the cable. Thank you.
Sir?
Dennis Martin, 182 Pillsbury Road. As far as the cable thing, again, I'm with this young lady and the other speaker. Besides, she can make a deal you can't refuse. That was the cute on the, let me get my thoughts here together. Taking money from the funds, from the cable company, from the cable access public television, is like taking my money that I pay in cable at Comcast. You don't have the right to it, as far as I'm concerned, okay? It's my money. It's the cable people's money. But if you take the budget away from public access, you might as well take my freedom of speech away. Because what you are cutting into is my ability to go use public access anytime I want, do any type of show as a producer, and express my freedom of speech. You take money away, you take my freedom of speech away. It's really that simple. And if you're looking for budget cutting, or you're looking to budget cutting, let me read you some figures and you can probably figure out who I'm talking about.
Sir, if this is more appropriate to a particular individual area, are you going to start drilling into one particular area? Because it seems like we're having this conversation about cable, and we have a whole part of the meeting dedicated to
I'm going to show you where, we're talking budget cuts here. You're talking budget cuts, right?
Continue.
Okay. $121,000 a year. $117,874.85. Admission time, $3,400.24. $500 in education. $56,473.66. $73,891.38. $75,755.26. $77,900. I'm not finished.
Point of order?
I'll come back to you. Sir, I'll come
Let me
back to you.
finish.
I'll come back to you.
Point of
I had a
point of
point of
order.
order.
I'm hearing numbers, but I don't have any context. I'd like to know.
These are town managers and assistant managers
I'd
and
like to
people
know
that
if
are
these
work for the
numbers are coming
town.
from a particular line item in the budget, so I can at least put some intellectual
Well,
thought around it.
this is public knowledge that's written in, these are budgets, money that should probably be freezed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to try to cut him off. I just wanted to know some context, just rather than just rattling off some numbers.
Okay.
Heather Anderson, 31 Perkins Road. This is just more a question in preparation for going through the budget. I keep hearing things about unions not wanting to take a pay decrease or pay freezes. Could we have any sort of idea as we go through these individual areas, what areas of the budget are union and non-union? One suggestion is my company this year had, as their cost-cutting measures, they gave people what we called furloughs. So based on your level of salary, your level of position, you would have anywhere from 1 week to 2 weeks unpaid leave throughout the year. Gave people extra time off, shared the grief over a number of people. A lot of people bought into it. Well, everybody bought into it, and as far as I understand, my company, the union, even bought into it in that particular case because it did save 4% of salaries for the year for the company, and everybody benefited. They shared the pain. Not everybody benefited greatly, but at least it was less painful for everybody, and nobody lost their job. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it would probably be, to answer this nice lady's question, it would probably be easier to explain that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, I think we only have a half a dozen employees who are non-union. The rest of them are in a collective bargaining group.
We have 6 full-time employees that are not represented. That's correct.
So to answer your question, it's only the 6 people, so most of the budget would be affected by it. And as I recall, as it was reported back to us, the collective bargaining groups came back and said, they didn't say no. They said, not at this time. So they left the door open for discussion, in all fairness to them.
Okay, any other members of the public have any comments on the overall budget? Okay, we'll move on to our first section, which is community development budget. This includes, Dave, should I go through this, each individual one, or should we do collectively all
Let's
three?
just do them by group.
Okay, so by group. So, community development, it consists of planning and economic development, the building department, and zoning. The numbers are, I won't go ahead and read them all, but all the planning and economic development, it's showing a reduction of about $40,000 from last year's budget. There's an increase in the building department, and zoning is relatively flat. So, questions from the council?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'll wait to hear from the public before making any comments.
Community development? No? Same here. Budget committee, questions on?
I'll listen to the public's comments.
I'd like to listen to the public.
Okay. Anyone from the public who has a comment specific to community development, so planning and economic development, building department, or zoning?
Mary Soares, 2 Gale Road. A few years ago, the town council decided that they were going to merge the departments of planning, building, and zoning under one umbrella, the community development. I know you're currently considering cutting a secretary position from the planning department. I'm told this is because it appears that there are 3 secretaries whose jobs must overlap because they all fall under that community development division of the town. But I believe that nothing is further from the truth. They each fulfill a unique, vital role in our town Department of Community Development, and our town will suffer for the loss of one of them. Please keep in mind what is coming up within the next few years. The economy is beginning to turn around, and we have a proposal for a huge amount of development in the near future and the potential for more near the airport in nearly the same time period. Without the support of the secretaries that they give to the people we have charged with planning and overseeing the engineering, we will see a change in roles that, as a town, we should not expect or want. We hired our experts in the field of development, planning, and engineering to do just that. To expect that 2 secretaries will be able to absorb what the 3rd secretary had been doing without impacting what our community developer, planner, GIS manager, building inspector in their day-to-day responsibilities do is ignorance as to the unique responsibilities and talents each secretary holds. I know that there are ways to become creative within the budget. Should there be a way to save the position for even 1 year, we should do it. This is not the time to be cutting the community development budget or staff. The town has a history of saving a penny today only to spend $20 tomorrow. This is just one of the examples that with the proposed reduction in staff. Never before has the support of this department been needed as much as it is today. Please consider restoring that position in your budget. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the community on community development? Okay, any final thoughts from the Budget Committee or the council?
Yeah, Dave, just to, again, level set where we're at with this particular department, in order to meet the goal to provide our taxpayers with a flat tax rate from the town side, the planning internship program was eliminated. Again, this is for the fiscal 12 budget. A full-time secretary position was eliminated, and that will result in one other secretary position supporting the planning board, the zoning board, and the conservation commission activities in addition to staff. In other words, there won't be no secretarial support. There will be secretarial support, but it'll be done by a person who's got other responsibilities.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
I just believe that to ask a secretary who's already got a full job to absorb what you're asking them to absorb is being disservice, is showing a disservice to that person, because they have already got a full responsibility, and you're adding another full-time job. Are you giving that person a raise? Are you doubling her salary, or his salary? I just think that's unrealistic and unfair of y'all to do, and I believe that it will be detrimental to what's going to be happening in our town in the next coming years. I believe that if there's a way to be creative within the department because it's a bottom line budget, if the community development department can come up with a way to save that position, even for a year, it should be allowed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask
Yes,
Dave?
Jeff.
I just had a quick question.
Hold on.
Go ahead, let her speak. No, always let her speak.
Heather Anderson, 31 Perkins Road. I just noticed that this is the only area where we have an increase of $126,000 for the building department. Can you explain what that increase is?
Yeah, there's a proposal to merge the inspection services between building and the fire department into the building department budget. So some of those funds are a transfer from the fire department.
John?
Dave, are there any creative ways, since it's a customer-facing position, to keep that person in planning? I mean, the question's been asked, so I'm asking you.
Well, the only way is that there's an outstanding purchase order for GIS, which the community approved some years ago, and the council has a long-standing practice to avoid using one-time revenues, which created a GIS PO for operating expenses. So by repurposing that PO, that's essentially what you'd be doing, is providing a one-year Band-Aid for this particular position.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, did you have a comment? No. Okay.
You gotta get, I think Mary wants to address you, Mr. Chairman.
And then,
Not unlike moving $40,000 from the cable into the general fund. You know, if you're willing to do it for one, you should be willing to do it for all. And then we're talking about a person as opposed to just lowering the tax by, what did you say, 0.5%? So if there is a way for us to repurpose those funds, I believe we should repurpose those funds. If they're just sitting there not being used right now, then we should use them.
Mr. Baldessaro?
Thank you. Once again, Al Baldessaro, 41 Hall Road. Quick question on the, if we stayed flat at the total, let's say the fiscal year 11 budget that we already voted in March, which is $25,983, and I'm looking at the tax rate of 474. If we came in with those numbers, we talked the unions into freezing, would that tax rate, because all people want is a stable tax rate, would the taxes stay stable, the tax rate on the town side? Because, you know, we're going to have to fight the school side is where our big issue is. So I'm just wondering, if we kept 2011 numbers, does anyone have to be laid off? Is the tax rate stable?
To clarify, our direction to the town manager was that we wanted the rate to be flat. So the final rate for for fiscal year 2011 was $4.74 per thousand for the town side of the budget. That's the only thing we have control over.
Right.
So based on that, that's how this budget came about.
But I'm looking for
So-
I understand and I respect what you're doing here, but I'm looking at the total numbers, and I'm looking at that 25, because I'm one, believe me, that wants a cut. But when I look at the numbers on the small budget, you know, on the town side, and I look at the tax rate of 474 for 2011, if we stayed at those numbers, would we, number one, have to lay off people, and we could talk the unions into freezing, would we stay flat still for 2012? And nobody gets laid off, we continue to march through this recession until it picks up.
I wish it was that easy, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight, but here's what we're faced with. You've got to take the current year's budget, you've got to add the contractual obligations on the contracts, you've got to add the increases in health insurance payments, which is about 13%. You've got to add the additional retirement payment. The retirement rate went up again this year, and also because the state has decided to renege on its longstanding promise of paying 35% of the retirement costs for our police and fire personnel and reduce that to 25%, the cumulative impact of the retirement system is a $351,000 increase this year in the budget. So when you look at last year's budget, and you add in the health, and you add in the retirement, and then you adjust the revenue, some went down, some stabilized, okay, that created a $1.3 million challenge we had to remove from the draft FY12 budget to meet the council directive of a level funded tax rate.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of the numbers you're getting on the retirement fund that's gonna be coming in. But my concern was on the, because over 300,000, if in fact that happened and the unions went flat and didn't take a raise, then there'd be another 200,000-300,000 there. Then that's why my question was, would we have to lay off and maybe ride the recession and keep the tax rate stable? That was my concern when I looked at the overall numbers. Thank you.
So to kind of restate what Dave said, if we had a so-called default budget where we just kept everything level but only added in increases that, we had no control over, we would be looking at, Dave, my math may be off, and I'm thinking about 20 cents increase in the tax rate, 30 cent increase?
Well, 1.3 million is
Over 30.
it's almost 40 cents.
40
but
cents.
it's in the high 30s.
So instead of being $4.74, you'd be looking at $5.15 per
Mr. Chair?
thousand.
Yeah, I think it's a very valuable point. We've made it at a couple other meetings. In order to deliver a flat tax rate on just the town portion of your tax bill, we had to find $1.3 million. Your tax bill's still going to go up because it's made up of more than the town component, but this board's trying to deliver no increase on that portion, and it takes 1.3 million absent any wage reductions elsewhere through some freeze or some voluntary offer.
Also, as with any budget, there are we're going to really talk about one component primarily tonight, and that is those things we spend money on. There's two components to a budget. It's expenditures and revenues. And the revenue discussion, and Dave got into a little bit with Al, that's one of the issues that's gone down, with the revenues going down in this one particular case that the town manager spoke of, revenues from the state. Since those are going down, then we have to correspondingly decrease our expenditures. Otherwise, the taxpayers have to make up the difference in higher taxes to make up for those revenues. So that's one of the reasons why in this particular budget scheme, you can't, if we were to level fund or level spend from last year, taxes would go up because revenues are projected to drop.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on from this and on to public safety, would you consider, if Mr. Martin wants to, would you consider letting him finish what he was saying before we asked him a question and interrupted him, so that he could finish making his point and then we could move on? If he wants to.
I'm all set.
Just want to make sure you were all set.
I can certainly give you copies of what I have.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone else from the public or the town council or the budget committee have any comments on the community development budget?
All the way in the back.
Good evening. My name is Andre Guerin, the Community Development Director. I just wanted to just clarify one aspect of what Mary was saying, and Mary, I appreciate your support on that. Was with regard to the repurposing of the GIS PL, I just want to make sure it's clear that the proposal that I submitted to the board, the budget committee, and town manager was to, one, reduce the hours of the secretary from a full-time to a part-time position, 32 hours, would basically eliminate the benefit package and reduce the overall salary from by about $33,000. And then the remainder of it was going to be used through repurposing of the GIS PL. This so clear on the GIS PL. Right now, we have been using that GIS PL for its purpose, the reason why it was derived, and that was for the GIS program. The internet mapping system that I believe the town has enjoyed over the last several years is now being used to provide a new flyover of Londonderry, new mapping, and update the whole system. So the PO is being used for its purpose. This is after all that is done, and the remainder of the PO is what it is after all the costs have been expended. The remaining PO would have enough in it in order to support the position if it is repurposed. So, just want to make sure it's clear.
For clarification. Any other comments on community development? Okay. We'll move on to our next item, which is public safety. We actually, I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of public comment on both components of this, which is police and fire. So what I would suggest is that we, for this particular area, we actually break that down into two separate discussions so that we concentrate on one versus the other. So if my recollection is correct, I think in the budget hearing, fire went first, so maybe we'll let the police go first this time. So. Members of the council, any questions regarding the police department budget, which went from approximately $6.8 million to $7.2 million, and the reason there was an increase was because of the proposal to take on some additional services that were done by the fire department regarding dispatch. Mike.
Yeah, Dave, just, I'm going to keep calling on you to level set things. The initial budget message that you gave us, and then the subsequent one, does not contain any reductions of full-time emergency first responders in the police department. Is that correct?
Besides, there's one SRO position being eliminated, but the number of police officers on the street will remain the same.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Other questions or comments from the council?
Now, with regards to this, Dave, we worked in the savings for, the possible savings for dispatch on the fire side and not on the police side, correct?
Yeah, the budget includes an anticipated savings of $94,000 from a combined dispatch arrangement.
So what have we learned about that? Is that looking like that's something that we're going to be able to do, or is that looking more like something that's further out in the future?
Well, it's looking at this point that the implementation costs will be well beyond the $50,000 we anticipated, and we're still looking at staffing levels. So Lieutenant Jones, who's here this evening, has been spearheading a committee, and I've sent questions back to the chief today. So we continue to work that issue to see what's the correct number of staff which would be involved in a combined dispatch, which really drives the economics of the proposal.
So the implementation of this, hitting that by July 1st, is starting to look more gray every day.
It's starting to look like more of a challenge, that's correct.
And, you know, just on some numbers I've heard thrown around, we're probably looking at more of an investment in the $250,000 range versus the $50,000 range?
Well, it's significantly higher than 50,000, but again, we're in the middle of our analysis, at least my analysis of the information I've presented, so I can't really speak to a specific number at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So Dave, in the event that this is looking gray, what are you going to be able to do to correspondingly cover what we were anticipating would be coming out of the budget?
Well, based upon the directive of the town council, I'll have to find another $94,000 on the expense side to offset that projected savings.
Have you begun to look at that yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Tom, did you have something? No. Mike, did you have another comment? Budget committee? Don?
Just one question, David. The call center combination, that 94,000 with 50,000 offset for expenses for the combination of it. And is that 94 just on the police side, or is that combined police and fire?
That's the combined projected savings. Right,
Okay.
The original projected savings was 144,000, and we fenced 50,000 out for transition costs. So the net save to the budget as presented is 94,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the budget committee? Okay, members of the public regarding the police department budget? Just come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Daniel Bouchard, 8 O'Connell Drive, Londonderry. I want to address the issue of the SRO. We started this SRO program back in 1989 under a warrant article where the townspeople voted it in and approved it. It grew throughout the years, and I think Londonderry probably had one of the best SRO programs available out there, and it was very beneficial not only for the youth, it was beneficial for the parents, for the staff of the school. It's not, you know, the SRO program, it's not just, all right, we're going to have an SRO at the high school. You also need one to cover the elementary schools and middle school. You could have one person doing that. And it's important that you build that the relationship with the youth. And I can tell you numerous times how our SROs have diffused situations which would have escalated, you know, if they didn't have that relationship built up. My wife can tell you numerous times how, you know, I'm out there mowing the lawn and parents would drive up and she'd say, "Who was that?" Well, you know, so-and-so had a problem with their child and they want to talk to me about it. And, you know, as a resource, you try to help them out. I would like to know from the council if they would support a warrant article for a second SRO and let the people in town vote on it. Vote it down, vote it up, let them decide. And that SRO would be not the additional one, not the one at the high school. It would be totally separate. And this SRO would hopefully cover the elementary schools and the middle school and build that relationship with our youth so that when they do get to the high school, they have that relationship built with the officers. Because, I mean, I can tell you numerous times when we had an officer at the high school, he'd contact one of the other SROs and say, "Well, what do you know about this kid? How can I help this kid out?" And that's important. And I'd just like to know if the council would support a warrant article like that.
Mr. Chairman, all due respect, Dan, I'm not in favor of polling in these types of scenarios. I would prefer that we take Dan's suggestion under advisement and put it on our agenda at our next meeting or a future meeting and give it some consideration and give the manager an opportunity to meet with the police chief and provide a departmental recommendation and how that would be supported and what schools would be supported and so forth. I think just polling us right now without the benefit of that information, I think doesn't do the subject matter, the thoughtful service that it needs.
John, did you have?
Go ahead, John.
No, I think that I think it's all been said. I haven't got anything better than that.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Dolan. I mean, I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable answering you one way or the other now. It's certainly an out-of-the-box idea that maybe wasn't thought of. And, you know, I could also say that, you know, there's stipulations in the charter for the public to bring forth warrant articles, and regardless of whether the council would support it or not, so.
Well, I know the council can bring up a warrant article, and I would like for the council to bring up the warrant article. If
And
the
it's
council will not bring up the warrant article, I will get involved with the PTAs in this community and bring up the warrant article if we have to, because I think that's very important. And I spoke to Chief Hart, and, you know, I think he's supportive of it. Thank you.
So something for us to consider, perhaps. Mike?
Mr. Chair, I'm not in favor of any action that will result in us not hitting our goal. How's that?
All right.
I would echo what Mike's saying. I think we need to stay the course as far as what we're trying to accomplish. It all goes to, you know, I understand what Mr. Bouchard's saying. I think, you know, obviously, it's an important position, and it has a lot of benefit to it. But we can't go in the other direction with this. We have to stay focused on what the goal is, and that's to keep a level budget right now, get through the trying times that we're going through, and then as time goes by, look at things again. But right now, I'm fairly safe to say that I'd like to stay where we're at.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I heard something a little bit different. I'm not saying we sway from the goal, but what I heard was a citizen come up here and say, "You know what, I'd really like you to look into it." And I think that's what Mr. Dolan is saying is let's look into it. And, you know, and if I don't agree with what you come out with and saying that you're not going to make a change, I'm going to bring it to the town, you know, meeting floor. I at least think we ought to do our homework. If he intends on bringing it to town meeting floor at some point, he's giving us that opportunity to do that, and we ought to at least get prepared. And I'm not saying we should change from 1.3 million, but at least let's just get prepared. Know all the information before we go into it.
Other members?
So what you're saying is, if I'm hearing you, is should we have Dave look at it from the point of view of adding back a position? And then what are the corresponding reductions elsewhere?
What I think I'm saying is that, and I'm trying to understand what Tom said is that have the town manager speak to the police chief, find out what the ramifications are, report back to us so that we know what they are, and at least we're informed. If we still decide not, and I'm not trying to speak for Tom, but if we still decide that we want to stay the course and not add an SRO in, at least if Dan brings it to town meeting floor with 25 signatures, we'll at least have that same information to share with the public. Hey, this is what we did and this is what we learned, and let them vote as they vote. That's all I'm saying. If I repeated that correctly, I'm not sure if I did.
In addition, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the other additional thought was, I'd like to have the town manager tell us and the public what the calendar looks like for bringing forth a warrant article. There are some restrictions and there are some dates that are specific to both the council putting forth a warrant article, and also there's a time period for a citizen's petition if that's take place. And I think the time's getting short, so I think we owe it to Mr. Bouchard to make sure that we give appropriate time period, if that's a direction that we send him off in, and also that we offer the appropriate legal assistance to make sure that a warrant article, a citizen's petition style warrant article, is worded in such a way that it's legal and it's robust, and that if the town supports it, we can implement it.
Thank you.
I asked him to come back up. Just for clarification, it is, the reason why you and everybody else is here is to bring your ideas to us. This is why you're here, and this is why we want you to come. Are you asking us to consider putting back the position? And if so, you want to try to do it in this budget, and I need to know so we're all on the same page. Do we need to have our town manager look at a corresponding reduction somewhere else in order to put this back?
No, I'm not looking for you to put it in this budget. I'm not asking you to make any other reductions. What I'm asking you is bring a warrant article forward and let the people decide. Keep your budget the way it is, all right? Meet your goal that you want to meet your goal. We always have warrant articles at town meeting besides the budget, and people vote it up, people vote it down. All I'm asking is bring that position, find out exactly what the cost is. Dave can probably, come up with the cost and say, this is how much we need for a second SRO. Put it out there on a warrant article, totally separate from the budget. And if it gets voted in, great. If it doesn't, then the people don't want it. It's kind of difficult for me to ask for that after I just told you that, we have 4 people that, had their homes foreclosed on, and all these people need help. But I also know how valuable this position is and how much money it saves the community in the long run. All right? So I'm not looking to be, save a couple pennies here and spend dollars over there. What I'm trying to do is save a position and let the people in the community vote on it. In 1989, this whole position came forward. It wasn't in the budget. It was a totally separate item on a warrant article. And the PTA brought it forward, and the people voted on it, and it was voted on, then it was included in the budget all the time. But then after so many years, it was always coming up every year for, cuts. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Al? Mary, did you want to go?
Al Baldessaro, once again, 41 Hall Road. Of course, the petition is apples and oranges compared to what you're talking about tonight. There's a process, and we all know what that process is, with the 25 signature, 5%, 1%, and then the 5%. Hopefully we go in accordance with the charter like we all have in the town. But anyways, that's not what I'm up here about. I support the SRO, but I also support what you're doing here. And I'm wondering, once again, I'm asked the same question. If the unions took a freeze on this, will we support this position? Will the money be there to support this position?
I don't want to bag out, but I'm not the policymaker.
No, but I'm saying if on some ungodly reason, I'm going to keep asking this question if I got all night, because we're going to lay off people in town, SROs, and I know other towns are making this work with freezes on their union contracts. If the union, would we have to lay off? If they froze their pay, would we lose the SRO in the school?
Al, You could ask this question every time, but the answer's still the same. We don't know. We don't know what the future could possibly bring. We may find other revenue sources. We may find that one collective bargaining unit agrees to this, all 5 agree to it. We don't know. So at this point, we have to go by what we do know, and that is the budget that we have before us.
Okay,
And that's
what
what
I-
we're having the hearing on.
Can I try something?
Yes.
If all of a sudden we were given a $500 and some odd $1,000 revenue stream, which is what Dave quoted this would mean, as a policy board, we would start to consider what to put back into this budget,
Right.
Al. How's that? We don't have a $500,000 gift given to
It's
us
not gonna
as
happen.
of tonight.
Right. The reason I'm asking these questions, because I know for a fact, getting ready to go into the county budget here within the next few weeks, we're going to do our damnedest to keep the budget, county budget, cut, okay, and keep it where it is. The same thing with the state. We've already been told that every bill, we got authority as chairman to kill bills that, with the fiscal notes, okay, then it costs the state taxpayers money. So, but this is on the top level, but we need the help in the lower level so we can keep people in their homes. That's why I keep asking, if for some ungodly reason, we should already know. If I had your budget, I can look at what the rate is, okay, what the contract says for this coming up year, look at all your employees, and then what's the overall dollar that would be, if they didn't take a freeze, how much money all the union members would be saved. That's the only number I'm looking for.
And then, to reiterate what Council...
I know what he's saying, but I'm saying as the
He
town
gave you the
manager,
number,
he
500 and some odd thousand.
Okay, I missed the number. It was 500, let me write that down. I'm getting a little older. What was that number again?
$500,000.
$500,000 would be saved if the unions took a freeze. Now to answer my number one question, we wouldn't be here right where we're at. Would that keep an SRO in the position?
And Al, that's where Councilor
SRO
Brown's point comes in.
An
There are
SRO is
lots of...
$100,000.
But there are other things that we'll have to look at what was taken out of the budget, and in priority order, see what we would put back in. Perhaps the SRO would be at top of that list.
Okay.
Fully loaded.
Maybe, but that would be a discussion we would need to have.
Okay.
Perhaps it's the SRO, perhaps it's some other program, perhaps it's multiple programs.
I mean, I'm looking for everyone to take a cut. I mean, not just the working force, People got to stand up and say, enough is enough. That's what I'm looking at.
Mr. Chairman, just to bring everybody up to speed that may be coming into this process at the end, in an early version of the budget, we took out all the SROs, zero that out. And in the process of dialogue with the public and with the other governments in the community, the council moved on that issue and added one SRO back into the budget with the thought that would be targeted for the high school. In order to do that, we had to take the equivalent dollars for that SRO out of the budget and other places to keep the net impact to zero. So the council has shown some movement on the SRO topic to this date. We've heard some testimony tonight that some folks would like to see some more movement on that. We've also heard an alternate, as the chairman said, an out-of-the-box proposal to offer up a warrant article at town meeting for the citizens to make that decision outside of the council budget process. So that's the other idea that Mr. Bouchard's brought forward.
I just want to thank Al for supporting the SRO, and if I do that petition, Al, I'll be calling you for the signature.
All right.
To get back to what you were asking, though, about the timeline, what would be necessary?
Thank you, Mary. It needs to be very clear is that Al was referring to an initiative petition under a charter for non-budgetary, okay? Citizens' petitions for budgetary warrants is set by state law. It's the signature of 25 registered voters submitted this year by February 1st.
Okay, so we have a good month and a half,
Yeah, and we urge you to get your,
not even a month.
3 weeks.
It's not my job to pass judgment on any kind of petitions, but it's our recommendation, get the petition to us before you go out for signatures. We'll have a town attorney review it, because in the past, we've offered that service. People have gone through the process of getting signatures, and for one reason or another, the petition is invalid under state law. So to save yourself a lot of trouble, get it to us, we'll review it, turn it around in 24 hours, and then off you go. You should always get more than 25 signatures, because usually what happens is some of the signatories represent the registered voters and they're not. And so we have to cross those folks off the list. You need 25 to be validated.
So I think Dan should take from tonight, though, that he would be better off to bring a citizen's petition rather than wait for you to have another meeting and have a discussion about this and put it through as a town council petition.
Yeah,
Don't you
our-
agree?
Our next meeting is 2 weeks from now, so.
Yeah, so I'll be your second.
Mr. Martin?
Dennis Mott, 182 Pillsbury Road. SRO, possible a federal grant for that, just in that position?
Realistically, not any longer.
Huh?
Realistically, not any longer.
No?
No.
So we couldn't get no federal money back, like the fire department and all that?
No. We
Dennis,
did receive a COPS grant years ago, and we've applied for some in the most recent past, but we've not been successful, so that's not a viable funding option for us for that purpose.
Okay, maybe that'd be the answer.
Mike, did you have a comment?
No, just what he was going to say.
Okay. We're still in taking comment from the public regarding the police department budget. Any other public comment regarding the police department budget? Okay. Any final comments from the budget committee or the council? Yes, John.
I just wanted to make a comment that, it's not pro or con SRO, but the proposal to cut the SRO came as a result of our asking department heads, if you have to cut a certain amount, 5%, where would it come from? And I think the police chief would agree that it's not a program he wanted to cut, but in terms of the hierarchy of where public safety has to be prioritized, that was something that he reluctantly put out there as cutting the budget. So every department and every agency in this town has been asked to take cuts, and it hurts, and there's certain programs that are near and dear to folks' hearts, police department, school officials, and whatnot. So while I certainly respect the right of the warrant, I think that we got to remember that the proposal came from the person who's in the best position to judge public safety. And we're trying our darndest to keep this a level budget. I've talked to so many people this year that have been laid off. Some have found jobs, some haven't. People are having real trouble. And I think that that's what the sentiment's been up here, to try and keep a flat budget, so we're not paying any more on the town side. And the only question I want to throw out is, if the warrant does go through, maybe Sue and Dave, where would that money come from? How would we fund that if the taxpayers say, we want this back, find $100,000, would that come out of general funds?
Tax increase?
That's exactly right. If the voters approve an additional warrant article, it would be additional taxes to be raised.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And yeah, to clarify, the warrant article itself would have the tax impact in whatever years it would take effect, and then the tax rate would then go up by that amount.
By that amount. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other final questions regarding police? Okay, the next item on our public safety is fire department. Questions from or comments from council? John?
Not this time.
Mike? No? Budget committee? That's all set. Okay, members of the public regarding the fire department budget, which is $5.156 million. And sir, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is John Grennan, 14 Jewel Court. Good evening. First of all, as a taxpayer, I'd like to thank everybody on the Budget Committee and on the Town Council, Town Manager's Office for their work here. Been in town for about 3 years, and it's my first time in this building, so I'm definitely a newbie at this. The reason I'm here, and I saved my comments on the police because they're kind of lumped in with the fire department. As a new person in town, between the Derry News and the Londonderry Times and all of the cable access that I've watched, and through the websites, both public and private, it is obvious to me that there is going to be some level of a staffing reduction in both our police and fire. And Councilor Brown had said that with the police budget, we would not be seeing a reduction in emergency response personnel because it's an SRO. And that, along with any reductions to the fire department, which, from what I read, maybe dropping minimum staffing from 9 to 8, maybe dropping a command presence or a fire officer totally, is troubling. And the reason I say it's troubling is if we do drop an SRO, then we have dropped emergency response capabilities, because I assume if a 911 call came in at that school, the SRO would respond. So we'd be increasing our workload by having patrol staff respond to that. I think the patrol staff that responds to that situation at the school would be at greater risk because they wouldn't have their eyes and ears inside the school. From the fire department point of view, I have to share a 1-minute personal story. About 8 months ago, my wife called 911 because my 3-week-old son stopped breathing. So my introduction to this town's public safety, cursory at best before this event, was that 2 Londonderry police officers responded to my house, and they were probably there in a minute and a half. And 2 young, hard-charging professional police officers, followed by a fire officer who took charge of the scene, contacted me on my cell phone as I was rushing home from Boston, where I was working, 2 highly skilled Londonderry firefighter paramedics, and then the fire engineer that was assigned to the engine company. The outcome was that they ended up reviving my child, and after a 4-day stay at the Elliott, my child is alive. And my concern here today is I think this is a slippery slope for the police department and the fire department in this town to be looking at any staffing reductions. A staffing freeze is one thing, but any staffing reduction to either of these departments does 2 things, in my opinion. One, the people on the police and the fire department, by the way, I don't know any of them except the folks that received a card from me thanking them for saving my son's life. We place them at risk. And we have a safe community. In southern New Hampshire, crime is up. Southern New Hampshire, medical calls are up. I read in the newspaper that the Elliott down here is causing our ambulance service to work double time. Things aren't slowing down, and we're thinking about reducing staffing. Call it what you will, but we're taking away. And I think this is going to do 2 things. We are going to place police officers and firefighters at risk in this community. That is number 1. Since the event at my house, I have taken the time to do more research than the normal resident would. I understand we have a 2-man engine company in town, and I understand that that places the firefighters at risk if they enter the building. I can't imagine 2 firefighters in this town, the dedicated firefighters that we have in this town, standing on the front lawn when a rescue needs to be performed and they won't go in the building. That's not going to happen with these men and women we've hired. And the police officers in this town, I'm not going to bring up specific incidents in southern New Hampshire, but it's been heinous in the last 24 months. And I think to preserve the quality of life in this town and to preserve the people, the safety of the people that protect us, I don't think we can consider dropping staffing. The last thing I'll say is this. If the ambulance in Londonderry is out, from what I understand, and I've talked to the other fire departments in the area, if there is an accident on I-93, and that accident at 65 miles an hour involves entrapment in a vehicle, we're going to lose 2 ambulances in this town. We're going to lose the fire officer, and we're going to lose a rescue because of the tools that are needed to save those people on I-93. When I call 911 again for somebody in my house not breathing, I'm going to get those skilled Londonderry police officers in a minute and a half, and thank God, but then I'm going to wait for an ambulance from Hudson. And I'm told the ambulance from Hudson won't have paramedics on it. Or maybe it will because it's Monday, or it's Tuesday, or it's the 3rd Sunday of the month. And the fire department here and the police department here, they have set a standard for excellence. I moved here 3 years ago from this town, and I moved from Boston. And I am involved in public safety. And that's why I've taken a great interest in this. This is a premier system, and they're not asking to expand. But we are going to take staffing from them, and that is a slippery, slippery slope. A parent may come before this board a year from now, based on the conversation that took place here tonight, and say that my son or daughter didn't experience the same, I don't know, success that my family did because we waited for Bedford, or we waited for Hudson, or we waited for Wyndham to show up. And I think that that is something that, I'm not calling it a sacred cow. I don't buy into the scare tactics. I don't know much about this town. I think it's a wonderful town. I have never encountered a town employee here that doesn't give 105%. I'm the biggest supporter of this town you'll find. That's why we moved here. But I think this is a slippery slope, and people are going to suffer, families and our public safety providers, and that's unacceptable. Thank you.
Sir, if you'd stay, please.
Sure.
Dave, we're not reducing headcount in the fire department, are we?
Not first responders, no. No, right now, we,
I'm sorry, I should have told you, I'm just going to try to get some clarification, I apologize. So we're not reducing in the fire department?
right now, we have a two-person inspection division to be reduced to one, but as far as number of folks manned in our stations to respond, we're not reducing that complement of personnel.
I'm sorry, sir, I thought I misunderstood, that's why I wanted to get clarification.
Well, I hear the part on the police side that we're not reducing emergency response personnel, and I would respectfully disagree. We are.
I
So when
understand.
you say reducing emergency response personnel, if we have firefighters that are working in this town and they are performing, I don't know what inspection services or whatnot, are they in town free to respond to, say, a structure fire?
I'd have to defer to the chief. I don't know what
I
their
I would love to hear the
responsibilities are.
answer, because I think it's important.
Chief?
Get up.
No, you could stay.
Everybody that's a uniformed personnel responds to every emergency within the town, wherever they are, just like the police department does.
My understanding of that then is, I mean, the chief is here right now. He's not on an engine, he's not on a ladder, he's here. My understanding is the chief's a firefighter. If there's a structure fire in town, I would assume that the chief right now would leave. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So those two people that we're calling not emergency response personnel, the chief just he gave us an opposite answer to that. They are. And in fact, if they are working, they are going to go. And I would imagine that there have been examples in this town where they have responded. There may even be examples where a life has been saved or property has been saved. So we are reducing it. We absolutely are. We can call it something different, but we're reducing staff.
So in June, we had a hearing about getting additional staffing through grants, which this council was supportive of.
Yes.
I live in a neighborhood in which, in the last 5 years, I've watched 2 houses burn down within the eyesight of my house. All right, so fairly large fair amount about the fire department at this point. They came in and they told us what they thought the ideal staffing would be according to NFPA.
Sure.
This council voted to support those grants, and they've applied for those grants. I understand completely what you're saying and everything. I would love to put 4 firefighters on an engine. Here's the difficult, and I don't support reducing the staff on the fire side. I actually brought the message from the school board with regards to the SROs as the school board liaison to add in, the additional SRO. Here's the dilemma I personally sit in. 100 houses have been foreclosed on, and after the snowstorm, as I drove through town, I saw the number of driveways not cleared off, and you could clearly see the houses that have been put aside for frozen pipes. God only knows I want them to show up, and I respect what they do and that and the professional service they get. I haven't got any other ideas. We're not reducing them. We're not telling them. We're not reducing staff as far as I can tell. I know the SRO, and I don't disagree with you on the SRO. But, you have a personal conversation with the chief and say, hey, chief, what's the best we can do here?
Sure.
That's the predicament that the 5 of us are in.
And I respect that.
And if someone could give me another idea of where I could go get the money from so that I don't have to tell the person who goes up to see Father Bob at St. Jude's Church to get groceries, I'd do it. That's where I'm stuck in this whole thing.
Right. And I respect the position that the Budget Committee and all of the work that you've done and the Town Council. I just, when cuts are being made, I think that the last 2 places that we should be cutting are places that could result in the death of a citizen. This is not a scare tactic. I lived it.
I agree.
It could result in that. And if we're looking at a cut that results in a greater administrative scope for a position or whatnot, I wish there were no cuts anywhere. I think that has to be taken into account. And I agree with you, NFPA staffing, I'm assuming it's more than we have right now. Yes, I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating level staffing the fire department that performs this service, and the police department that performs the service they do. And, I heard Chief Hart's comments, and I read Chief Hart's comments, and I heard a bit of them. I don't think, and Chief Hart, I don't know any of these people here, and Chief Hart can certainly correct me. I don't think Chief Hart offered up the SRO program. I think Chief Hart, to me, made a conscientious decision that he could not deduct from his on-duty patrol staff for safety purposes, for officer safety purposes, to allocate the person to the schools. And I heard in the back row that kind of played a little bit differently. I don't think that was the case at all. I think he had to make a conscientious moral decision to his men that he wasn't going to put them out there short.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay, good. Excellent. So that's that. I'm just asking, I think it's a slippery slope, and I think that we should leave the police and fire departments alone.
Sir?
Yes.
Keep on coming.
Yeah.
All right?
Chairman?
Just please keep on coming.
Yes.
Mike?
Is it Mr. Brennan?
Grennan, I'm sorry.
Brennan, I'm sorry. Are you in favor of a flat tax?
Am I in favor of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
I am in favor of it.
thanks.
I'm not sure how relevant that is to this point. I'm in
what
favor
we're-
of a flat tax. A secondary or follow-up question may be, am I in favor of taking from someplace else? That would probably have been a fair question.
Yep.
I think it's clear from my comments that I am not in favor of taking from the police department's budget or
Yes.
the fire department's budget.
Comments are 100% crystal clear.
Thank you.
Yep.
But certainly maybe someplace else.
Yep. I hear you.
However, I haven't run for town office, so I'll leave that to say.
Hey, we have a position open on the planning board, you know?
No, I'm going to pass right now. Thank you.
That's how I got started in
Thank
this.
you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Heather?
HeatherEnnison, 31 Perkins Road. I think that guy should be negotiating with the union for a salary freeze. Who does do the negotiations with the union?
How do you know he's not in a union?
Does anybody have any power over discussing with them? I mean, they're public forums. I mean, how does that whole process take place? Because $550,000 would save a lot of these essential positions, it sounds like to me. And that seems to be a common theme amongst everybody. I mean, it's fine to say that they said, no, they don't want it, but I mean, at what point do you fight it? I'm sure that cities all over North America, or the U.S. anyway, are fighting those salary increases this year.
Is that a question you want us to try to answer?
I'm not sure we can answer that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know that we.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't
know.
think it would be
I think,
appropriate for us to answer that.
I think that's really more directed towards the town manager, I
Okay.
believe.
Well, I can talk about the process, is that town meeting has to approve by law any collective bargaining agreement with our employees, which they have in the past, and we're currently living under those agreements. And we don't negotiate our contracts in the public. We make a request one-on-one, and they give us back their response for anything outside what we are contractually obligated to provide.
When's the next negotiation up?
It depends upon the firefighter's contract ends this June 30th. The police officer, I believe, have 2 more years. We have 6 collective bargaining units in the community, and they all have different expiration dates.
Okay, but we do have some choice in suggesting a salary freeze strongly in negotiating that?
Well, we have a wide variety of issues to negotiate on upcoming contracts, but
Right.
once contracts are approved by the voters, we have a legal obligation to fulfill those contracts unless both parties agree to do otherwise.
Okay, and also, when the contract goes before town meeting, it just like any other warrant article, it shows you the tax impact from year to year to year, so you know what the effect is. And also, and the text of the contract is made available as well, so you could see, what the stipulations are.
Okay. I've worked for a union before, and we've been negotiable, so I just don't want anybody to think that they came back and said, no, and we're not going to push for.
Well, technically, by law, anything can be negotiated in a collective bargaining agreement. If an agreement is in place, can a negotiation take place? Yes, if both parties decide that they want it to take place. It can be done legally. Right? That's under the law that can happen. And Dave is our lead negotiator, and he handles our direct communications with the union.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Any other questions regarding the fire department from the public? Mr. Bouchard.
Should just stay up here. Dan Bouchard, O'Connell Drive. I think one thing that I would like for the council to look at is to call firefighters. They do a lot of work in our community, and they donate a lot of their time. If there's any way that you could look at possibly saving those positions, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Dan's doing a lot of adding tonight. Haven't heard one reduction from him.
Hello.
Janine Perro, 103 High Range Road. I'd like to read a letter on behalf of my husband, who has a scheduling conflict, who can't be here. My husband is a call firefighter on the fire department, and this is his letter. I write to you tonight, not as I have many times in the past, to inform you of the wonderful programs that go on in town, such as the annual Family Safety Day event, the St. Jude Blood Drive, or the Bone Marrow Drives, or any of the other community activities I've been fortunate enough to be a part of. Unfortunately, I'm here to write about the fate of the currently proposed budget for fiscal year 2012. As I thought about what I was going to present tonight, I was torn by what I was going to discuss. Do I write about the proposed termination of the call firefighters, of which I've had the pleasure to be a member of since 1991? Do I write about the drastic cut in funding to the entire Londonderry Fire Rescue budget, or about the state of the town itself? While I and many other taxpayers in town appreciate your efforts in trying to hold the line in the budget, and therefore the taxes in town, you need to determine, are you, as Mr. Reed Clark stated previously, sacrificing public safety for money? The current budget, as proposed, does not only eliminate the call firefighters, which have been a part of the fire department since it became a full-time force in 1969. It makes several additional drastic cuts. The call members are supplemental help to the full-time budget, full-time department members to help when extra assistance is required. The budget as proposed for the call force is $20,000. The call force has been responsible for the car seat safety program, the annual safety day, which held its 10th event last September, as well as many other activities. We currently have 7 active members with room available for an additional 3 to 5 members. These members are notified via pager and assist at any call the department needs additional assistance on. Now's my dilemma. How can I make a point to keep the $20,000 for the call force when many other cuts have been made to the fire department budget? If the currently proposed budget passes, major cuts will be made, and the irony is that the call force would be needed more than ever. Chief McCaffrey was asked to present a budget with a 5% funding cut, which he did. Once his budget was presented, several other cuts were made. Is there a reason why the fire department is being asked to bear a larger percentage of the cuts than other departments? Some examples of the cuts are followed. Gear replacement funding is eliminated. Don't you think replacing older gear for members who risk their lives is somewhat important? 6 sets are replaced each year. By doing this, we eliminate a larger request every few years to replace an entire department's worth of gear, thus holding the budget stable. Vehicle maintenance. The budget is level funded from last year. While that statement is correct, what are the budgets within the department got to level fund this account? While we have a newer fleet, there are still breakdowns and regular maintenance that needs to be completed. Elimination of the fire marshal position. Who will be responsible for plan reviews, inspections, fire investigations, etc.? I am told that per state RSAs, the schools cannot open in the fall without an inspection by the fire marshal. Who will perform this inspection? Do we call the state fire marshal every time we have an incident that needs to be investigated? Chief McCaffrey is ultimately responsible. Is he the one who's going to do inspections as well as run the department as chief? Elimination of the fire prevention division. Correct me if I'm wrong, but shouldn't the fire department provide education and support to the community and its citizens to prevent fires? This was not part of Chief McCaffrey's proposed budget. The overtime budget. While there is a slight increase in the overtime budget from last year, what other line item budgets suffered to make up the difference? As far as I have been told, the department's budget has never been fully presented. The amount of sick and vacation time available has not been covered. This line item will only result in additional dropping of staff when someone calls out. The staffing should be 10 line firefighters, paramedics per shift, plus a shift captain. 3 personnel at Station 1, 3 personnel at Station 2, 4 personnel at Central Station in order to cover ambulance and other pieces of apparatus. You are looking to reduce staff to 9 and possibly 8. You are well aware of the many times where the department runs multiple calls simultaneously, and these reductions will not help the manpower situations. While it is true that mutual aid is available, this cannot be abused on a daily basis. Other towns are under the same economic situation, and their budgets is similar to Londonderry's. Consolidation of the police and the fire dispatch centers. A town the size of Londonderry, with the amount of calls each year, require the proper staffing. Closing the fire dispatch center will curtail the citizens' abilities to access the department. What is the cost to move the equipment, et cetera, to consolidate to one unit? While there are many additional cuts being requested, these are examples of some of the larger, more important cuts proposed. Chief McCaffrey, along with the shift captains and many members of the department, have worked extremely hard to present a budget that holds the bottom line, but more importantly, allows the department to continue presenting a safe working environment while providing excellent service to the citizens of Londonderry. I implore you to revisit these cuts, reverse them, and continue to allow the department to present the superior service it provides for the town. We need to fully fund these services, not cut from one to add to another, the proverbial take from Peter to pay Paul. I am also told that to keep the same level of services to the town, it would be a 40-cent increase in the tax rate. For a house valued at $300,000, that would be an increase of $120 per year, or $10 per month. Ask the citizens, is this what they want? I've enjoyed my time with Londonderry Fire, and I, as well as other call firefighters, look forward to providing a much-needed service to its citizens. The Town Council has made great strides in holding the increase in taxes, and I am confident that with more time, you will be able to work with department heads to find additional cuts. We, as a town, need to increase the tax base and continue to hold the line. We need to make it easier for companies and businesses to move in and establish in this town. And some barriers need to be removed to allow businesses the opportunity to come to town, to provide jobs and tax revenue without delay of costs. A simple task, that ends his letter. Sincerely, Vinnie Curro, Londonderry resident for 23 years and a call firefighter for 19 years. Now, if I could step into my role as the wife of a 19-year call firefighter, let you know a few of the things that Vinnie has done in his service to the town in these years. Vinnie is a completely trained firefighter, as is all the call members of the fire department. He is a nationally registered EMT, and he also holds his ambulance license. So he is completely trained, as are the other call firefighters, to respond to emergencies. He has performed CPR in the center aisle of our church, and successfully, I may add. He's helped many, many crash victims, including ones that happen outside our church. My husband and I also run the Child Passenger Safety Program here in town. The Child Passenger Safety Program is one that allows parents and caregivers to come in and have their car seats checked for proper use. This is a program that is 98% funded through donations and grants. The parts of the program that are paid for by the town include registering and inspecting the van and the trailer. And they also provide Vinnie with payment for 3 hours every month in order to put on the program. It is done on a volunteer basis. We have other volunteer child passenger safety technicians, including some from the police department, who come in once a month and inspect car seats. Let me tell you how important that was. One day, it was a fall day, and some new residents to town had brought their children into the fire department with cookies just to say thank you to the fire department. And going out to help this man figure out where he was going, I took a look at his vehicle. And his child's car seats were attached with bungee cords and ratchet straps. So I asked the man if he had time, and he did. And we came in, and we took care of getting rid of his outdated car seats and installing 3 brand-new car seats at no cost to him into his vehicle. While that may sound wonderful on its own, that following winter, that vehicle was involved in a rollover crash on I-293. And the only person to get hurt was the driver, who was not buckled. Those 3 children didn't receive any injuries at all and survived the crash. So this is an important program, and one that won't be able to keep going unless the call firefighters are funded. The ice storm that we had and the windstorm that we had, my husband and another call firefighter were out in a pickup truck with chainsaws. They were clearing roads and
I did that
removing
too.
trees. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they do all this for $11.50 an hour, and for no other reason other than just a point of reference. Crossing guards make $12.99 an hour. Just a point of reference. No judgment, nothing, just a point of reference. So, given the fact that 75% of the full-timers live out of town and may not be able to respond to an emergency, the call firefighters, the 7 that we have, are very vital. And the $20,000 that it takes for them, we respectfully ask that it could be put back in. I respectfully ask. And I would also take the same stand as Dan Bouchard, is that if you're not going to consider maybe putting it back in, that I would be willing to have a citizens warrant petition and let the citizens decide whether or not they want to fund it. So, but I thank you for listening, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while we're between testimony here, I just wanted to just take a half a minute to recognize we have some students in the audience, and I just wanted to recognize their presence and thank them for being here. And you have a unique opportunity seeing your government in action, and I hope you learn something and take it back to your class and report back to your teachers of what you saw, and perhaps create a report or a journal in your social studies. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Tom.
Hi, my name is Brian Johnson, 10 Loop Road here in Londonderry. I'm also the fire marshal with the fire department. I just want to bring some information forward to the town council budget committee on some of the cuts that are being made to the fire department. Everybody keeps looking at what is being cut. They keep saying that the fire chief, police chief are making these cuts. I don't think either one of them voluntarily made any of these cuts. Some of them on the fire side actually came after Chief McCaffrey's cuts. Very reluctantly, he offered up eliminating a fire inspector position. We've had 2 people in the fire prevention division. We've never had a inspection services division. The fire prevention division is much larger than inspection services. As the chief said earlier, myself and the former fire marshal, we're both certified firefighters. We respond in emergency vehicles when there's structure fires. I've been in Councilor Farrell's neighborhood for every one of those fires, not just on duty. 2 o'clock in the morning, that pager goes off, I get up and I go. That's another set of hands to help out the guys, start out the investigation, drag hose, whatever is necessary. Eliminating the fire inspector position, you're taking those hands away from emergency calls as well. So saying you're not touching emergency services, ultimately you are. Ultimately, our job, 40 hours a week, is doing inspections, safety, pub ed, everything else in the town. They were correct that now, with the new state law, the fire department has to inspect all public schools before they can open in the fall. Moving the fire marshal back to fire inspector and putting that under Andre, you lose that right. Okay, so now the fire chief will be ultimately responsible for that. The fire chief has a whole list of duties that will have to be done by the fire chief, no longer by the fire inspector. Plans review, with the Woodmont project coming into town, you're going to have a large amount of growth coming in the next couple of years. The fire inspector is not responsible for plans review. He cannot make judgment on or exceptions to the fire code. The fire chief can do that, or his designee in the fire department. My biggest thing is, I understand you guys want to keep a level budget. As a taxpayer, I thank you for that. Talking with the fire chief, I guess the savings with his proposal is like $3,000 by moving the position over to the town hall. And he has said he'd find that $3,000 in his budget. Ultimately, we're losing services for $3,000 that he said he could find somewhere else. I'm just questioning why we're doing something if we're losing services and the fire chief has said he will find the money somewhere else. I don't see the sense of it. You know, if someone can show me the light on this, great. Move my position over under Andre. I can no longer respond in an emergency vehicle to a fire. I can show up later. I am certified fire investigator. That's very hard to come by. There are only 3 organizations in the country that certify fire investigators. I was very fortunate by this town to send me out to the state of New York, go through their fire academy, become certified. I can be a secondary investigator under the fire chief. I can no longer be a lead investigator if I'm not in the fire department. I have citation authority. Someone breaks the law, you know, they don't service their sprinkler systems, their fire alarm systems, they have a fire exit blocked, an arson case, anything like that. I have citation authority under the state fire marshal's office to take them to court. I lose that under going to the building department. No one else in the town of Londonderry has citation authority under the state fire marshal except myself.
Brian, if I can interrupt you for just 1 second, I just want to get some clarification to something that you said. I'm not doubting what you say, I just want to get some clarification.
Yeah.
Dave? Brian said something along the lines of that there was a $3,000 difference in moving the inspector over to the building department versus the inspector staying in the fire department. Can you shed some light on that?
I'm looking for that information now.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I just wanted to
That was under the fire chief's proposal. I think Dave Karen's proposal, it was approximately $20,000 savings. Because the only real savings you're saving is from fire marshal pay to fire inspector pay. But the problem is, as with any other place, you know, there are responsibilities that the higher-up management can do that the lower can't. Fire inspector under RSAs, under NFPA, there are certain things a fire inspector can't do that a fire marshal can. You know, ultimately, there are things that won't get done because it'll fall back on the fire chief, and we all know he's already doing multiple jobs now. We don't have an EMS director, we don't have a deputy chief. You know, you walk upstairs during the week, and there are 3 of us there. That's it. You have a chief, a fire marshal, and a secretary. You know, we're not real heavy upstairs. But I just wanted to bring to light that, you know, I don't see this, you know, where this savings being appropriate, even if it was $20,000, to lose these services in town. State RSAs say that all assemblies in town have to be inspected by the fire department. I don't see where the fire chief's going to have time to do that. And when you're looking at, you know, public safety, these things are as important as the guys on the big red truck. If I'm not out there making sure the businesses are maintaining their fire alarms, their sprinklers, their fire extinguishers, making sure the exits are clear, in this economy, they're not going to do it. Having your systems inspected annually is required by state law, but if there's not somebody there, You know, it's like having a speed limit sign out here, but them knowing there's never a police officer, you know, people are going to ignore it. And I run into it every day when we go out and do inspections. People aren't maintaining their systems because of the way the economy is. They don't want to spend the money on a sprinkler system that they don't think they're going to need. You know, you guys are looking at real-life experiences here. My former boss, Mark Tatro, was the former fire marshal. He had gone down to Comcast here in town. We were having trouble with their fire alarm system. He stayed on them to get their fire alarm system maintained. The day they got that fire alarm system up and running, that night, we were notified by their fire alarm of a building fire. If that fire alarm system was not maintained, that fire would have been a lot larger, would have been a lot more loss to their building, and a lot more risk to our firefighters. So, just want to bring some of that to light, and hopefully we can look for that $3,000 in another avenue.
Sure.
I think,
Thank you,
I
Brian.
want to hear what Dave has to say as far as what the real savings is.
Did you find that?
A few more minutes.
Yes, sure. Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Sir.
Thanks, Dave.
Pep Vitale, 75 Mammoth Road. Councilman Dolan just recognized the students that are back here. I believe the students, unless I'm wrong, I believe the students are here for a specific reason. And looking at the agenda for today and the time that we're taking now, they have school tomorrow. Want to keep them here? They're learning how the government works, but you're going to deprive them of their ability to speak. So I recommend, like you do occasionally in the town meeting, change the cable division to the next category.
We certainly take that in.
Can we pass a resolution to give them the day off? I'll sign the note.
Yeah, we'll take that next. No, we'll take that next.
Okay.
When we're done with fire department.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. I didn't realize that.
My name's Gene Jastrom. I live in 19 Horseshoe Lane. My disclaimer is I work for the fire department. I work for you people. You people represent me. There's a couple of comments tonight that's kind of concerned me a little bit, and the comments have been from a couple of councils. I understand that you're trying to level base and make sure that the tax rate's the same. But I also want to hear the fact that you're open-minded and you're willing to listen. I've heard a couple of councilmen saying that they're open-minded. If they would find money somewhere else, make a program work, so be it. But I've also heard at least two people give me the impression that what is here, and doesn't make a difference what anybody says, this is what's going to happen. The problem I have is over the past 20 years that I've been, 19 years that I've been on full-time, and 24-plus years that I've been associated with the department, the call volume's gone up consistently over the years. These people have come to you, the officers have come to you with a safer grant proposal. They've got the stats, they've got all the numbers and everything else that show that the call volumes are going up. The question I have is if we're going to take the budget and actually lower the budget a little bit to bring it in at a level line, how are we not going to turn around and not maintain the manpower of 10 people on duty? That's my question. And I would really like to know the answer on that. The other fact is that the more calls we get, because of 93, because of the airport, because of there's several major areas in this town that just continue to go up. How are we going to be able to capture that, and how are we going to be able to provide the service for the community? And my biggest worry is the fact that if we do end up dropping down in manpower for some foreseen reason of budgets or whatever, that possibly my house might be the one that's going to turn around and have a delay of either a medical issue or a fire issue. So I'd like to know, because I read through the letter that was posted in the minutes for tonight, dated on December 28th, saying that staffing was going to be from 10 people down to 9. One person doesn't seem like much, but you've heard the spiel before on one person. I just want to know, is it the fact that we are potentially going to be dropping? That's what I'm asking. And I don't know if you people have the answer or not.
First, Gene, we missed your name and address for the record, if you could.
Eugene Jastrom, 19 Horseshoe Lane.
Gene, I think I asked this question earlier, and
Yeah,
maybe I'm not understanding, but my understanding is that you're staying at 10. I think you've been here, you've heard me ask the chief the same thing.
I understand that, too.
So if we're not, and you know something that we don't know, then you need to tell us.
I read what the minutes were going to be and what was going to be discussed tonight before coming here. And I'm not exactly sure what's actually being cut at this point, or what's being modified. Because in there, on one of the lines, it states that manpower might be dropping. Maybe I read the wrong thing, but
I'm not seeing that in, this is the letter dated December 28th from the...
Yep, and I
from-
was online tonight reading it, and it was one of the...
I'm seeing that we're cutting 8 positions across the budget.
I wish I brought a copy with me, because I could tell you
But
which
I'm
line
not-
it was.
I'm-
But if it is, if I misread something, then I'm sorry for taking the time, but
So my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that outside of what Brian just spoke about with regards to the inspection department, nothing changes at the fire department, personnel-wise. That's my understanding. And that
then
shift stays at 10, and maybe the chief can correct me, but that's what I've been told.
well, then I must have misread a webpage or something, because I'm pretty sure I
Chairman?
saw that it was
Yes,
a...
Tom, would it help if we gave him that correspondence?
Right there in the corner.
Maybe you could take a look at that correspondence and then read it, and then come back up in a few minutes, and maybe you could help crystallize your thought on that.
Thank you.
I'm Bruce Kennison at 39 Buckingham Drive. I'm a 10-year member of the Call Firefighter Department. Wasn't coming up to talk about this. I think the issue is we're not eliminating anybody who's currently a full-time firefighter. I think we're eliminating the overtime to cover them when they are on vacation, sick time, whatever. So when you don't cover them, you have your 10 people scheduled, one person is out, and they may not be covered. I defer to the chief to this. I didn't come up prepared to talk about this. I can tell you that yesterday when I came in for the 5 calls we had within 1 hour, there was 2 people on engine 2. There was 2 people on engine 1. We were grossly understaffed to our ability to respond to 5 calls a lot at one time, obviously. Basically, at this point, even with 10 people, we can mount the beginnings of a fire attack. We can put 2 people inside the building. We can have engineers running the tanks or the trucks. We can have an emergency crew outside to rescue those people if they're in danger. That is the beginning of an attack. We can't mount the attack on our own. We can handle basically 2 medical calls, which we have 3 ambulances. Obviously, we go beyond that very often. When we talk about having the same number of people, if we're not going to cover the overtime, which I think maybe the issue may be wrong, if we're not going to have the fire inspector available, if we're not going to have the 2 or 3 callmen to show up on large volume events, we won't have the same number of people available. We're going to have 8 or 9 folks, 8 of them who can handle whatever the emergency might be. And, my personal area of interest, obviously, is of all of these guys, because I've worked with them for many years and very interested in their safety and the ability to provide a service. But also for the callmen, we only cost money when you use us. Gene talked about the rate of $11.50 per hour. When we get paid, we're actually actively engaged in providing service to the town. None of us make more than a couple $1,000s a year, if that. So it's a very low cost and very efficient system that provides some level of support, not even the full support the fire department needs, but some level of support to get us past those high volume demand times. So I think I don't want people to walk away with, we're going to have the same amount of people on the trucks. When I came here, we had a certain number of people. I've seen a decline over time. 3-man engine crews are the basic, the minimum to be safe, to allow people to go inside and somebody to be outside. we don't have that many days, and we'll see more of that going on if we're not able to fund the overtime to put somebody else to come in extra to cover someone. So hopefully we can restate all those services to make sure we can provide the safe and level service of the fire service for the town. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't realize you were waiting to speak.
I'm going to throw the disclaimer out. My name is Bruce Hollow. I'm a firefighter paramedic with the town, but I do not live in town. I work for the fire department as a firefighter paramedic. I'm the guy on the ambulance. I just wanted to get up and share my thoughts as far as the department budget. I know everybody's been talking, we're not dropping personnel, we're not laying people off in the fire department. But as many of the captains have spoken, and the fire chief as well, by reducing the fire department's budget, it doesn't necessarily cut a firefighter as far as the job, but you're cutting a position. So when we reduce the fire department's budget, we're dropping positions. Today, I'll speak, I worked on Sunday, and the calls that Bruce was talking about, we did 5 calls in a row, back to back to back to back. One was a fire alarm activation in the north end. We got a medical in the center of town. We got a chimney fire in the north end of town. We got a pretty serious medical call in the south end of town, and then 40 Buttrick Road. All those calls came in at the exact same time, within 10 minutes of each other. We're dropping down now. We were running at 9 on Sunday. That includes the captain. So there was only 8 responders to handle those calls. We're running 2-man engine companies at all 3 stations right now on this year's budget. So I can't even fathom to imagine how it is that we're going to maintain staffing like we are today, which is already below where we should be in next year's budget. And I'm obviously very appreciative of the fact that we're not cutting positions, we're not cutting actual firefighters, because unfortunately I would be one of those firefighters that would have to go. But I'm confused, as I know we're saying we're not cutting personal responders, and I don't know how we can say that we're not, because every day we don't fill that 3rd man at Engine 1, every day we don't fill a paramedic at Central, and in this next budget, every day that we close Engine 2 because we're not going to have the overtime funds to keep all these stations open, how is that not cutting responders? How is that not cutting positions? And I know that a lot of people don't realize everything that we do as a fire department or as first responders, because I don't think people really understand what it is that we do, and they don't understand how many calls we actually do at a town this size. But I think we were just shy of 3,400 calls for the year, which is about 10 calls a day. And 10 calls a day with 10 guys on a piece, that's, that's stretching our resources pretty thin. On Sunday, we had 2 mutual aid ambulances in town. Derry came in for 40 Buttrick Road, and the unfortunate people in the south end of town had to wait for a Wyndham ambulance and Engine 1 from the north end to go all the way to the south end of town. It was like 12 or 13 minutes for the engine to get there, and I think it was 14 or 15 minutes for the ambulance to get there. And that's today. That's this year's budget. That's not even next year's budget. So I just, as a person working on the front lines, as somebody who could respond to your house, and I know everybody says, well, it's not a big deal, we can cut this now, it's not, everybody says, okay, we can cut the fire department now, but when you pick up that phone and you dial 911, they want us there, and they need us there. And as that gentleman spoke about his baby, I was actually the paramedic that worked that night, and that's a horrible thing to take somebody's child to the hospital. And I would hate to have somebody have to wait for a mutual aid ambulance to come into town to take care of that. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So when was the last time you worked and there were 10 men on shift? 10 men or women on shift?
My last shift, I believe we had 10, but that's the last time that my shift's going to have 10. We unfortunately have a gentleman out on injury right now. He pulled his shoulder out, and I know people don't think people do think it's a dangerous job, but probably not here in Londonderry, because our fire volume isn't as high. But this past fall, I went out for 2.5 weeks and spent 2 weeks in the hospital with meningitis that I got from a patient that I took to the hospital. So while it's not a dangerous job, as far as, it is a dangerous job, and we're exposed to so much. So, and that's not a fault of anyone. It's just an unfortunate course of events. So it's not like, people are calling out sick because they got something going on or taking vacation days. It's when people are out sick, they're out sick.
All right, so let me see if I can understand what your answer was. Your answer is that from now until June 30th, there'll only be 9 people on the shift that you work because one person is out on injury.
Until the other firefighter comes back from injury.
Okay,
He should be back
so-
in
so your
January,
point-
in February sometime.
So if someone calls out on that shift, you're at 8.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, we're filling vacation? We're filling to 9 right now.
So you're filling everything to 9.
And that's today. 9 is today. So how are we going to maintain 9 tomorrow if we're with less of a budget than we are today?
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood completely what you were saying.
And I just wanted to make sure it was out there that we're not running at 10 today. We're running at 9 on some days.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Other questions from the public regarding the fire budget?
Gene Jastrom. From what I've gone through and read through here, I didn't see any drop to 9, so I correct myself on that. But what I also didn't see in there was some other cuts in there too, so I guess I rescind what I had said before. I'm having a problem trying to pull up the website to actually see if it was changed since the last time I saw it. I saw it yesterday. I could have sworn so. Maybe it was something refreshing that I didn't get on a web browser or something. But just wanted to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Kevin Coyle. I want to say that I work for the town, but I also sit in your position in the town of Derry. I am a taxpayer in this town to the tune of over $8,000 every year. You talk about the fire department budget. They're staffing at 9 now. Derry staffs at 17. We are a bigger town, but not that significantly bigger. What I'm here to tell you is that the town of Derry provides 4 times the amount of mutual aid than we get from the town of Londonderry. Over the last 2 years, we've come here 272 times for mutual aid, and we've received 60 in return. You are not adequately staffed in the fire department. And to propose a budget that is not going to adequately staff that department, but in fact reduce it below the level of 9, is not responsible. And as a town councilor, I would take that seriously because they're going to come to you when that incident happens. And you're not adequately staffed now. So, and to ask other towns to come in and support you because you don't want to raise 10 or 15 cents on the tax rate when we're paying double what you are to provide service to your town is unfair to us. So I'd ask you to consider whether 9 is an adequate staffing for your fire department. I would tell you that it is not. And I would ask that you consider, and I'm not one that needs a level tax rate. So, adding 4 or 5 cents to your tax rate is not significant. It's 1%. For the average house, it's less than $20. I'd pay $20 to protect my children. I think that most people in this community would too. I'd ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Please, Kevin, if you stay, Mr. Chairman. This brings up a very interesting question that I've been wondering for a while, and that is the issue of mutual aid. And so, Chief, to you or to you, Dave, either way, I don't have Dave's attention right now, but Dave or Chief Caffrey, this issue of mutual aid, how do we deal with this issue of when a surrounding town appears to be providing a disproportionate amount of aid to us, and we're not correspondingly provided similar aid back. What is the, I mean, how do we deal with that? What's the impact?
We have, since the original, about, I'm going to say almost 9 months ago, we sat down with Derry, and there was a disproportionate at the time use of it, simply because Derry's a bigger community, has more ambulances available. It was easier to draw from them more frequently than it was our other local neighbors, which, when that was brought to our attention, we changed our geographic policy, and we draw from the other surrounding communities as well more often. So that's been significantly reduced over the last 8 months. But again, even saying that, relying on mutual aid disproportionately is a problem for that neighbor as well as us, because there are it will eventually affect everybody within the surrounding area.
Well, are there any examples where it's the opposite, where we provide more aid to surrounding towns than they provide in return?
If you want the breakdown, I'll have to go and figure out breakdown for each town. There are a couple that we have provided more than they've provided us, but it's not completely disproportionate.
Is there a reconciliation process? I mean, do we settle up at some point in time?
The idea of mutual aid has never been mutual for anybody as far as the fire service has done for the last 200 years. It's based on when you call, we provide when and if we can. And if we can't, then somebody else moves up to fill our spot, and it comes from that concentric circle. Wherever the problem is, they draw from the outside in, and they keep drawing, and everybody keeps moving into the center circle, into the target area.
Well, and Kevin, are you faced in Derry with any type of a policy decision around this?
I can tell you that we discussed it at the council level, whether we were going to continue mutual aid. It was a discussion because we were being, in my opinion, taken advantage of. You know, when you're coming here 270 times versus the 60 we were getting in mutual aid, that wasn't fair to us. That's our manpower, our equipment, and everything. We have a tax rate that's double yours. You know, for you as the council or the body to say, come to our town because we don't want to adequately staff, that's not fair to us.
Finish it. So is that an option, Dave? Is that help me understand it? Do we have the option to opt out of mutual aid from just with certain communities?
That was my question.
Well, we have written mutual aid agreements with all the communities around us, and obviously one of the options, not enter a mutual aid agreement, but I don't see how that would benefit our community.
No, I'm just saying, so the converse of that is Derry has the option.
Yeah, those are optional agreements, absolutely.
Is that something that Derry's considering?
I wouldn't say that we're considering it now, but it's certainly, you know, we're looking at the same budgetary issues that you are. You know, we, as I said, have a tax rate that's double yours. For us to continue to provide a level of service for our citizens and then provide that same mutual aid is difficult for us, facing the same budgetary constraints. I'm not going to tell you that we're not going to do mutual aid. Mutual aid's a good thing, but it's got to be somewhat reciprocal. And if you're not adequately staffing, then we have to overstaff for you, and that's not fair to a community that has a tax rate that's double yours.
Sure.
Out of the 272 calls that we received aid from you, how many of those ambulance visits transcend into dollars?
You can be with it?
Mm-hmm.
We received from Londonderry 35, over a period of 2 years, 35 ambulance calls. In that same period, we went 152 times to Londonderry. So,
But my question is, when you had transports, out of all the calls, how many of them were transports? Because those transports turned into dollars for the town of Derry.
they do turn into, some of them turn into for Derry.
But
Some of them don't.
What I'm hearing...
I don't know the answer to that,
Right,
Sean.
but
I can't give you that.
You're coming here and chastising us and telling us that we're doing it disproportionately. Fine, the numbers are skewed. But out of those visits, from you guys coming over, I'd like to know how much of that was revenue producing. That's all I'm asking.
But Sean, sure, it
understand
is
what you're
revenue
saying,
producing for us, for the town of Derry, to some small extent. But what it is when there's 2 ambulances from Derry in the town of Londonderry because you're not adequately staffing and I need somebody in Derry because we don't have any ambulances left, we as the town of Derry cover Hampstead, Chester, and Auburn. We can't afford our ambulances to come here all that often. And what I'm saying to you is I think that you need to adequately staff your fire department, and it doesn't sound like you're doing that today, and with the budget that you're proposing, I don't think you're going to adequately staff it in the next year. So, and I don't think that's fair to the surrounding communities.
It's a valid point.
Very valid.
Right.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks. Other questions or comments from the public regarding the fire department budget? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council and the budget committee. Any final questions or comments?
The discussion of mutual aid is, I think it's a fascinating discussion. It's one that I've been thinking about, but haven't given probably enough thought to, but it's a fascinating discussion, and I guess as I think about the mutual aid agreements, Dave, I guess I'm surprised that there isn't some reconciliation process at the end of the period of mutual aid, that if we've given or received disproportionate support, that should be some, I would think just that by an act of fairness, there ought to be some settling up process. So if you've got disproportionate support from somebody else, you ought to pay for it. And if we get disproportionate support from, or give it to another community, we ought to get reimbursed for it. I guess that's just my thought. I don't know if that's an out-of-the-box thought, but as part of the mutual aid agreement process, I don't know if that's ever been included as this reconciliation, financial reconciliation as part of it.
If I may? Did you want to?
Dave, go ahead.
Well, just on that concept, if you're looking at such a disproportionate sharing of services, and you're looking at a pretty large amount of money to settle up, and if you're going to spend that amount of money paying out of the department, those dollars are probably better off invested in additional services with our department. I don't know what those numbers would be, but just on a philosophical basis, but mutual aid has always been developed on the general concept of every community has enough facilities, personnel, and capacities to take care of its own nominal level of service. And when you have those extraordinary events, that's when you call upon mutual aid to help you out. That's been the basic premise behind mutual aid for forever, for years. So when we look at some sort of disparate relationship now, we'll have to go back and reevaluate it and see what the cause of that is, and then come back to recommendations on how to correct that relationship.
Mr. Chairman?
It's
sorry,
Sean.
go ahead.
I think I understand Tom's premise and the idea, I think, but realistically, I wasn't even aware of those lopsided numbers, and what Kevin's saying is, I completely agree with. He's looking out for his town, just like we're looking out for our town, and if we have that many ambulances from Derry coming here, that is a problem. I mean, because they should be there for their own citizens, and so I understand the point and what he's trying to make, and I can appreciate that. Anyway, I'll step aside for you.
So, Kevin, Chief McCaffrey, sir, question for you. Theoretically, if we eliminate the on-call firefighters, will we be calling for more mutual aid since most of our firefighters live out of town and will not be able to respond as quickly?
Again, with the call department, it's when they're available, which is mostly nights and weekends. Usually when we activate them, we're calling mutual aid anyway.
Thank you.
Just to give you a fact, a town of like Litchfield with 8,000 people, let's call it, they run 2 guys during the day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. They've provided the town of Londonderry more mutual aid than we've given to them this year. And I only know that because my father-in-law is the fire chief in Litchfield. So they have come, a town of that size has come into Londonderry more than we've gone to them, and most of the time it would be the other way around. A bigger town would help out a smaller town. So that's just a little factoid as to what our call volume is and how often we pool from our surrounding towns. Thank you.
Al?
Thank you. Al Baldessar, once again, 41 Hall Road. Well, you know, seeing Kevin Cole come here kind of opened up some eyes. And it kind of, after looking at the numbers that I brought with me here, I hope we don't become like Derry. Keep that in mind. They're at 28, tax rate is at 28.48. So our founding father, our past elected officials here have been trying their damnedest to keep it stable. But of course, it's gone up here and there. Maybe this is time to keep what we have in place. Instead of bringing up more labor costs, keep what we have in place. Maybe bringing in a contract ambulance company to offset what we have, so we don't bring up more labor costs and more retirement and everything else that goes along with that whole package. So keep this in mind so we don't become like Derry. Okay, yeah, they're right, it's double. I mean, they deserve, they got a hell of a lot more than us, and a lot of it's probably really not needed. And I do see Derry fire trucks, God bless them, they're out on the highway with us. When I see Londonderry trucks on the highway with all them accidents, because for some reason, between exit 4 and 5, we've got a problem. And we know that at the state there's a problem. That's why hopefully it's going to get repaired soon. But with the amount of time they spend on that highway, I see Derry trucks out there too. So my question is, are those numbers added in on the support? Are they showing up to help us? You know, where are the true numbers on this here? You know, on them, where are they at on helping us? That's why I'm wondering, you know, on the numbers that they're saying, because sometimes they do show up and where they really needed, but out of loyalty to firemen, they're on the highway with Londonderry fire trucks. So how many times that is, I don't know, but we do have a lot of calls on our 93.
True.
Perhaps it would be fair to kind of level set folks' minds and so forth in terms of the process that we've been going through and questions that have been asked throughout this process over the past month and a half. And just in fairness, Dave, this question is for you, just so the public who may not have been aware of some of the discussions we've already had and the in-depth discussions that we have had regarding the tax impact. For example, if we were to maintain, keep in place the current fire and police, and just split those out separately, what the impact to the tax rate would be per thousand. So for police, if we kept it the way it is, and for fire, if we kept it the way it is, I know we've asked this question, we've gone back and forth, but for the public, if they could hear exactly what the tax impact would be for maintaining the existing current staffing, everything the same.
Yeah, I believe the number cited was 14 cents per thousand per department.
Per department.
That's correct.
Okay, so
Recall.
so just so that we understand what that translates to, on a $300,000 home, at 28 cents per thousand, that's $84 per year.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, I just want everybody to understand what kind of dollars we're talking about, little or small or large, depending on your perspective. That's all we're talking about here. So everything, that's what needs to be considered. And there's been a lot of challenges put forth, there's been a lot of pressure put on council, and they've done a phenomenal job trying to bring to the table ways, creative ways, and yourself included, to come up with these creative ways to reduce costs. Tonight we're hearing a lot of concern about maybe we're cutting too far, and maybe the pendulum has gone too far, and may need to go the other way. So I thought it'd be important for everybody here in the room and on watching on TV to understand we're talking about on a $300,000 home to maintain the current police and current fire just the way it is last year, this past year, the current year we're in. It would be $84 on a $300,000 home, annual tax increase. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted people to understand what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Doug.
I actually don't have a specific question, but I see there's a lot of people out there who still look like they have things they'd like to say. Is there any way that we can move to the next thing and come back to this? Because these guys are fading.
Yeah. Can I,
We have a lot of things to talk about, all right?
I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about them.
All right, and
I'm
if I
saying,
jump
is there
around
any
all
way
over
we
the
can-
place, we should have started that way. So I'd like to finish the discussion on the fire, then we'll go to the cable studio.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just had a quick request. If the dialogue is going to continue on the mutual aid, and I think I agree with the folks here that it's an important question and something that's probably going to go on from here, I'd be curious, and Al touched on it, how many calls are to I-93? I mean, you hear about 10-car pile-up and a whiteout. I mean, if we're talking about I-93, I had asked Chief McCaffrey when we went through the introductory process of the budget year, you know, if we get any federal aid, because we are responding on a disproportionate basis to I-93, being an interstate, and he said no, and which surprised me, because I'm sure they're out on I-93 for vehicular accidents all the time. So I think that that would be an important number that may skew what we're talking about in mutual aid. I'd just be curious if we're going to have some kind of inquiry on it. I'd like to see that as well. Thank you.
Bless you.
Al?
Hi, guys. Happy New Year.
Al Sypek, 86 Constitution Drive, former fire chief.
Keith, you running for council in March?
Pardon?
You gonna run for council in March?
You caught me by surprise on that one. But at any rate, you know, I've heard a lot tonight about contract ambulance service and so on. And since it was started on my watch, I would just like the public to know how it was done. Dick Plant was the town manager at the time. We saw a need at the time. The town of Derry was collecting all the fees, plus we were paying a $500,000 subsidy to them every year. The call volume rose. We thought it was economically feasible for us to start our own service. So you know what Dick Plant said? Good. You can compete with the privates. You're going to submit a bid just like they are. Well, there was one thing we did a little bit differently. You see, we own things in this town. We own property, we own equipment. So we leveled the playing field with the bids. We own the stations, we have the manpower. So we said, fine, you want to come in? You build your own building. Why should we subsidize you? And a matter of fact, we had one ambulance service that wanted to dedicate one ambulance to Londonderry, one not dedicated, but they were going to be in Central. We were going to pay their electricity, heat, we were going to pay for the quarters for their staff, and we weren't going to be paid for that. And they would have collected the money. I just wanted you to know that nobody could do that. We only had 2 proposals, and some of them were just out of the world. And it's just important for us to know that as a town, we don't think about it. We own assets. We own property. And there's one thing about a contract service. They can go bankrupt. The town can't. Just thought I'd mention that.
I could disagree with that one, but.
Any other questions or comments from the council of the Budget Committee? Anyone else from the public? Okay. I had promised these young folks here that we'll go to cable next. However, we are going to take a 5-minute recess before we do that. Okay, 5 minutes. It's 10:43. It is 9:42. We'll begin at 9:47. Please take your seats.
Sky is falling.
Another hour of it.
First speech is closed down in Londonderry. There you go.
My good friends in the Budget Committee, town
I'm here.
councilors. He
I
leaves.
count for like 2 people.
We have a quorum.
And we're missing Don. All right. Let me just wait for Margot. Is Margot out there? Just for some minutes. Margot! Polo. All right, John. No, not yet. Just take a seat. We'll get started.
I thought you were yelling Marco.
Marco Polo?
I just wanted to scream Polo.
The last name DeMarco,
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the, we're going to jump ahead to the one part of the special revenue fund, which is the cable division, and then we'll return to Public Works. Sorry, Yanis, I know you're out there someplace. Okay, so our cable division, the budget is $301,491 is the proposed budget. Comments or questions from the town council? Okay.
No, nothing.
Sure.
No, sir.
Mike?
Not yet.
Okay. Budget committee? Todd? John? Okay. Okay, so now I know the public is, there's going to be a couple of people who are going to have some comments here. What I'd like you to ask you to do is to yield to these young folks first, let them say their piece, and then come up in a methodical manner, and I'll recognize you and let you make your comments. What I do ask is, it's already 10 to 10. Please try to keep your comments to a reasonable amount of time, say 3 minutes or so. Try not to repeat the things that have already been brought up. Okay, so I will allow you guys to start.
Thanks for letting us cut.
Okay.
My name is Deborah Sullivan, and I am here in support of LACTV media program students under the direction of Erin Barry. And I've prepared a statement to read to you guys. Let's see. I have two sons, a middle schooler and a high schooler. And by the way, that's just a few of the media program students. These students have been under the direction of Erin Barry for 3 years now, along with a great group of other Londonderry students. Erin has fostered an appreciation for the enjoyable programs on public channel and has trained the students to use those programs as a teaching tool to help make their work better. The training that my sons, along with the other students, have received for free has been invaluable and comparable to me. As the Londonderry music program that starts in the 5th grade, that both my sons and many in the media program are also a part of. This program is a big part of our life as my sons work on projects at LACTV a few times a week. Erin has been instrumental, Erin Barry, that is, has been instrumental. Am I talking too loud?
No.
Okay. Erin Barry has been instrumental both as an instructor and a mentor, encouraging the students to get involved in the Londonderry community by learning about the town's many facets, and has helped them to enter contests for their video works. The confidence and skills that the students have developed as a result of Erin's work is priceless. Many of the students, and most especially my own, have a burning desire to continue in this field due to Erin Barry's dedication and availability. Erin's enthusiasm has created a dynamic learning environment that has flourished into a wonderful opportunity to tap into the raw talents of our Londonderry youth, as is evidenced in the students' works. This program and what Erin has to offer is vital to Londonderry youth, since there is no program in our community that offers such training for free. Many students in the elementary schools are interested in the program, and there typically is a waiting list for the summer camp. Many people that I meet have seen the Breakers show and are excited about getting involved in LAC TV programs as well. Erin has brought the video club to a whole new level, helping them to understand what it takes to work hard, and is now teaching editing skills. It would be a travesty to cut Erin's position, since her loss would mean leaving a group of youth literally hanging. Although there are other communities who have public access and therefore require a trainer, few of them offer dedicated opportunities for you to learn and to apply the skills that the students are taught. Please, for the sake of my son's dreams and the future youth programs for the town of Londonderry, I implore you, on behalf of the students of Londonderry, the youth of Londonderry, to reconsider the action to remove Erin Barry's position. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Folks, could we please just, thank you.
I'd also like to, okay, I'll do it again. Al Sypek, 86 Constitution Drive, Margot. I'd also like to speak to Erin's position, and I'd like to give you a couple of examples to illustrate her importance. Last month, I directed the open space meeting at the Cable Access Center. We also have committees meet there all the time that obviously can't be accommodated in this room. I directed that show, and what I did at the end of that show is I took 2 tapes and I dropped them on Erin's desk, over 2 hours worth. Now that's my involvement there. Now what you may not know is how these shows get produced. I dropped those tapes on her desk. She has to load those into the computer in real time, over 2 hours worth. Combine both tapes and edit them. If there are credits that need to be added, graphics that need to be added, she has to do that. After that, once that's done, then she has to do what's called encoding and muxing and burning a DVD. And that'll go well over an hour. Now that's a government meeting, that if she wasn't there, no one else is going to do that. Not with a staff of only 3 people. And if you didn't see it live, you wouldn't see it at all, again. Any of the committees, any of the public that want copies of meetings, she makes the copies of the meetings. So if you eliminate that position, you're going to eliminate some of your governmental output to the public. That's one issue. Another issue is, I'll give you an example, and Paul, I'll use you as an example. You're a fine example. You decide as a member of the public, you come into the studio, you want to do a show. Let's say you want to do on the wildlife of Londonderry. You don't know anything about public access. You don't know anything about television. You're going to get a producer's lecture from Dottie, and then you're going to go to Erin, and she's going to say, what do you want to do? You're going to say, well, I want to do a wildlife show on Londonderry. Okay. Do you need a camera? Sure. Good. I will train you on how to use your camera. So you go out, you do a camera shoot. You come back with a tape. You don't know how to edit? Basically, that's all you know is how to run a camera. She's going to take it from there and make sure that your show gets edited properly and gets put out on the air. Now, that's if you want to do something like that. If you want to do a show on the inside, and God knows I spend a lot of my time at the studio directing shows, I'll be doing the open space meeting in a couple of days. For those kind of meetings there, if Paul wants to do a show and you want to have a sit-down show in the studio. You don't know anything about that. Aaron's going to ask you, what do you need? How about a set? Lighting? Do you want to be trained in lighting, audio, or anything like that? If you don't, she'll talk you through it. Do you need graphics? If you need graphics, she'll do the graphics for you. She'll call Barbara and say, Barbara, Paul wants to do a show. We need a crew. She's going to coordinate that crew and make sure you get that crew. The camera operators, the audio person. If there's something special with the set, fine. She'll even do that herself. And the point I'm trying to make is there's such a variety of things that that position accomplishes that if that position is cut, there's not going to be any public access. There's not going to be anybody to train you on a camera. There's not going to be anyone that can edit. I edit. I don't come close to the editing ability that she has. And with only 3 people over there, you got a director, you have basically an assistant director that's an engineer. He spends full time keeping things running, doing all the programming and everything else like that. The rest of it, I think you've heard before, I was outside, but the summer camp with the kids, she also serves as a resource for the school. If they have a problem when they're having the class over there, camera problem, equipment problem, something in the studio, she also deals with those. So I guess that kind of wraps up any comments I have to say about that. And I urge you, if you really have to do it, and I do pay my 5% Comcast, and I agree, and I have, well, if you need to take money, but don't lose that position, or you lose public access. Thanks.
Other members of the public?
Al Baldessaro, 41 Hall Road again. I just real quick here, we pay for that franchise fees. I have no issue taking money out, but the small amount of people they have there, we've got to fund that. I have a kid who's going to graduate next year, who was in there all the way through high school. He's going into communications. It's because of that studio, along with many other young kids there, that he's where he is today. But the bottom line here is, if this was in the tax in the budget, no big deal. Okay, let's cut, that life in the fast lane, but it's not. This is money that I'm paying on my cable bill, my franchise fees. This is an extra, what they call a fee, is actually an extra tax, okay, that not everyone in town is paying for. So pay for those positions there, put a few dollars away out of that money that's coming in from Comcast for a rainy day, and then take out whatever else is left over. But don't start deleting that program there that has been a win-win for the kids of this town. At least for my son, I can speak in the large group of 20 kids that used to produce the movies over there, which they're all now in college. Okay, so I'm not going to beat it, but hopefully you think that, because it's a tax that we're paying separate from our tax rate.
Coming. Get the next batch.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Mary Ann Hassick, 7 Moulton Drive. I'm very nervous. I've never done this before, but my nephew is in the cable club that does the videos, and I've just seen him flourish being part of that group. And I've moved here 3 years ago, and one of the things that I thought was so cool about Londonderry was the fact that it had this in the town, and it was, I have 2 young boys, and eventually sometime I'd like them to become part of this program. But it sets Londonderry apart from other towns because it's enrichment for our children. From what I learned this evening, it doesn't really cost the taxpayers anything, and kids. There are a lot of kids that partake in sports in town, and we fund that. But there aren't a lot of things for kids that are into electronics and communications and that kind of thing. Aaron has been wonderful. I actually did contact her and have my boys, they were part of Cub Scouts. I'm so nervous. We had a Cub Scout meeting there, and she described the studio to the children and did a wonderful job demonstrating the facilities. And I just really hope that you don't get rid of that. I feel like it's a real thing that makes Londonderry different from other towns, and it would be sad to see that go for the children of the town. I feel like you're kind of taking away something really special. Thank you.
So that wasn't so bad, was it? Did
The kids already spoke.
they already spoke? Okay.
Well, she represented them.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, here they come.
There you go.
So what you need to do is just say your name and your address, and then we write that in the minutes, and then there's a permanent record that you spoke before us.
Yeah.
So if you run for president someday, you could say,
And they Google your name, they'll know what you said here.
Sean Sullivan, 9 St. Charles Street. I'm a Boy Scout as well as I do this program, and I want to do the cinematography merit badge, but if Aaron was to be cut, we wouldn't be able to do that badge. So I just wanted to put that out there.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're not a Boy Scout too, are you?
Yeah, I got kicked out.
All right, we're gonna leave that alone.
He's got that Coast Guard veteran hat on, so you better watch it.
Dennis Martin, 182 Pillsbury Road. You know, I was sitting here as we're talking about taking money away from the public access, and how much of an educational value that the 5% that pays for that, and I'm thinking, boy, no taxes are being taken to pay for this education. You know, it's almost like a free thing. You know, and outside of the fact that, you know, I told you how I felt about it earlier, that I feel that we cut the budget, we take that away, you're taking my freedom of speech away. Because anybody here can use that, as we all know. And then, you know, it's not a censorship type of station. Anything I put on it as a producer, I'm responsible for. And I like that feeling, you know, that's, you know, anytime, and like, let's take it to the state level, anytime that they take money from a fee, like I'm a fisherman, if they take money from my fee for fishermen and they put it in the general fund, you know, we know where that goes. You know, it just never seemed to can balance their budget when they take money for these fees that they do on the state level. Well, you know, this sounds like we're doing the same thing. We're going to take, you know, fees or, you know, money from, you know, the public access and put it into a general fund, and that's going to solve the problem for the budget. That's not, you know, like somebody said earlier, that's a Band-Aid. That's just a Band-Aid. And, you know, again, think of it this way, if anything, it's the educational free factor that anybody of all ages can go there, and it doesn't cost the town. And it's my money. I pay for Comcast. That 5%, that money I pay, is my money. I don't see how the town has the right to take my money from something that I pay privately. Thanks.
Hi again. Dan Bouchard, 8 O'Connell Drive. I know that at one of the meetings, Dottie mentioned that she'd be retiring, and I don't know if that was taken into consideration, if there would be money there that would be saved and be able to save some kind of position there.
She's not retiring in this budget year, Dan.
Not in 2012?
No, if she was retiring on June
See if you can
30th.
do something about that.
Then we could do something, but she's not until the following year.
Not leaving yet, Dottie? All right, sorry about that.
Boy, that's Dan. He hasn't cut a thing yet. That Dan.
Nope, not tonight.
At it every time he's come on.
Yeah.
31 Perkins Road. I've been a volunteer at the Londonderry Access Center for about 2 years, so I know this group pretty well. Couple of questions. We keep talking about taking money from the cable fund and giving it to the budget, and I understand it's to save money, save positions, save cash elsewhere, but has there been any talk about I think somebody mentioned earlier, just if there is a surplus in the fund, maybe Dave and Dottie working together to see if we can do a one-off use of that surplus this year to get us through the recession. Cutting a position is permanent. That position doesn't come back. Times get better. You know, we find other means of getting money next year. It sounds to me like there could be other ways of procuring cash to get us through this budgetary crunch as one option. The position, I agree, is very valuable. Aaron has been great, taught me how to use camera, taught me how to do audio, taught me how to do producing. My husband's a director over there. We've had the benefit of having the education. We've won some Northeast Media Awards. It's been a lot of fun as volunteers to do the work we've been doing, and we would never have been able to do it without the help of Aaron and the folks over at the Access Center. I just think we're robbing from the poor to you know, it's just a misappropriation of funds in my opinion. We're robbing from one area to give to another when we can't really rob from that area. It's not ours. We cut that position and Comcast comes to us a year from now and says, well, you know, you cut a position, you're not using this money anymore, we're not going to give it to you. So what do we do then? You know, why don't we find some more creative ways of maybe using a surplus so that Comcast doesn't see us reducing a position? That's a very visible cut for Comcast, and that's telling them that maybe we don't need the money that they have to offer us.
I just got one quick question. And this has got to go back. Dennis Mountain, 182 Pillsbury Road. Isn't there state-funded money for arts and all that and so forth? Grants, something like the federal grant programs and things like that? I don't know if I should ask Dottie directly if they know about it. You guys know anything about that? Or
I'm not familiar with any of it.
does anybody know about anything like that? No? No Arts Foundation grant money, nothing? Okay, just wanted to find out. Thanks.
Other comments?
I'm Carol Shanti from 12 Sunrise Drive. And my son has been part of this group for a while, and it's been really important to him. I know there are there's a lot of things for kids to do, a lot of sports activities. My son has a lot of very serious health conditions, and this is something intellectual and something that's been very educational for him and has really made a difference in his life. And I feel like it's, in essence, an education cut. We're not talking about the education budget, but it's an education cut, because students who are part of the club are learning editing, videography, script writing, anchoring, filming, sound effects, and a lot of other things. Some kids do it weekly, some kids do it a couple times a week, some kids go every day. So it's going to affect their education. I know some people have gone on to college after being part of the group, and the kids that are in it now are hoping for that. And it will make it'll make a very sad impact in their life if we cut it. Thank you.
Cindy Eaton, 16 Clark Road. I have several concerns. Some of them have been mentioned, but eliminating this position, I really don't understand why. Because this position is paid out of the revenues from the cable company, which I subscribe, and that's a 5% tax for me. And I approve of where using that money for this position, and I think most would. So because it's not coming out of the town, and I don't understand why you are cutting this position if the money is not it doesn't have anything to do with the town budget. It's coming out of the cable revenue fund. So why cut the position? Can someone answer that for me?
What it comes down to is there's a, Dave, correct me if I misstate this, but there's the cable revenue fund, which comes from the 5% surcharge that Comcast puts on every cable bill. And I believe that that's done across the country.
I'm aware of
You're a Comcast customer in California. you're paying a similar type of fee, which goes to their local. And then that is, and I don't know, is it, if it's a state law or a federal law, but that is available to the town as a revenue source. And that could be used for funding the cable studio and other projects in town.
Well, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, actually. I mean, if you really go back and you look at when cable was first brought about in the 1970s, the reason for a franchise fee was for a right-of-way. And it was for a right-of-way to use the lines that were already provided in town and work within the right-of-way of all of the governments throughout the entire country. So it was really at first a right-of-way fee. And it morphed into, using it for cable access and for other issues. But the first thing was for them to get a contract and get permission to run their lines and to pay that right-of-way fee that we pay for. I pay for. I have Comcast.
Same here.
So, so that was the initial reasoning behind doing it, was to fund all of that, all of those pieces. So that was the initial reason for doing it. So I asked Dave, I said, so Dave, did you check with all the other, because we do this all the time. Dave says to us, hey, I'm going to do this. We go, well, did you check with all the other communities in the state and see how many people they have in their cable studios? Or did you check with how many people they have in their police department? So I asked them the same question. I said, okay, how many people does everybody else have? And he came back to me and says, well, all the other cable studios have 2. He says, and we have 3. He says, basically, he says, my look at it is, and I'm speaking for him and I'm repeating what he said to me, is that, I'm looking at that position. We do a bottom line budget. He makes the day-to-day business operations decisions. According to the charter, we cannot tell him how to run day-to-day operations. So based on what he told me, that's what I know and what was presented to us.
So you're telling...
I'm going to turn over to Dave because I probably have gone a little too far. But I'll let you, please continue to ask your questions.
It was my recommendation to eliminate the position. This has been a very difficult budget for everyone, and it's a question of, given the directive I received from the town council, is a matter of priorities and which positions unfortunately need to be eliminated from the budget and which ones should remain. And it became a matter of priorities. And in good conscience, where we're looking to reduce inspection services and other equally valuable positions, I could not in good conscience continue to support having 3 employees in the cable department when we're looking at cutting other positions in the community.
But the money for this position is coming from a revenue fund. It's not coming from the rest of the budget, like the police department and the fire department. And so you're still not answering my question. Are you just cutting that position because all the other departments are cutting positions? When this is totally different. And Londonderry is totally different. Sure, maybe there are other access centers that only have 2, but we're Londonderry, and we're proud of it. And we have 3, and we have 3 because we have the best director, we have the best programs, they win prizes every year, and it's part of who we are as Londonderry citizens. So you want to become like one of those other towns that only has 2? Do you want to take my rights away for public speech? Because that's what it would amount to. If I can't get trained, then there'd be no public access, and that's a form of free speech. So why? Just to be fair with all the other departments? If you want to be fair with all the other departments, then take more money from that revenue fund to save some of these other positions that are being cut by the budget. Normally, I wouldn't say that because I agree that 5% that we pay in, not the whole town pays in, and it should remain for the cable department. But in situations like this, I think this goes above and beyond the circumstances of our town. So I don't have a problem taking more money from that revenue fund so we don't have to lose fire protection and police and some of the other positions that have been cut. And we wouldn't lose our training coordinator, which is so very important to our town. So once again, I'm going to ask, why? Why are you cutting this position when it's coming from a revenue fund?
Ma'am, I think what you're looking for is, in a roundabout way, you want us to tell you that we're going to keep it. So no matter what we give you for an answer, it's not going to be good enough. We have given you the reason, if you listen to me. If you listen to what the town manager has said, what Chairman DeMarco has said, we're all in a tough situation right now. There's a lot of people losing their homes. There are a lot of people asking us to cut things. They're saying we're not cutting deep enough. So we can sit here and spin this web all night long. We understand. We understand that that's a person back there. We get it. I was a person, too, a year ago when I was unceremoniously dumped on Friday the 13th, right before Thanksgiving. Okay? Let's please not use it. Let's keep the kids' comments, please. Okay? Let's be respectful.
Please, one person at a time, and Councilor O'Keefe has the floor right now. Thank you.
You want me to have my free speech rights? Well, I'm exercising mine right now, so please be respectful of that. I was a kid once, too. My point is, we're in a very difficult situation. We realize that's a person. I am a person, too. I know a lot of people that have been affected by this in a very negatively way. So I don't know what you want us to tell you. I understand your concerns. We do. All 5 of us do.
I don't think you do, sir.
Oh, I think we do.
Please hear me out. Please hear me out.
I have for the last 5 minutes.
What I'm asking is, why are you taking a position away when it doesn't do anything to your budget? It comes from a revenue fund. Excuse me. Let me finish my question, please.
Good.
Are you telling me that you are taking all the revenue money already, and that's why this position is going? I don't understand why a position has to be eliminated when it's not part of the regular budget. It's a revenue fund.
Can I ask Dave a question?
Go ahead, John.
Dave, how much is our revenue off from, our total revenue has dropped how much?
Out of total revenues,
Our total revenues, how much have they dropped?
well, the 3 major sources, every other source has remained relatively constant, but our 3 major sources have dropped about $355,000 for next year. Motor vehicle fees, building permit fees, and interest on income.
Okay, so ma'am, here's the problem we're faced with, okay? So I've been trying to do economic development as the chairman of the task force in this town for the last 3 or 4 years. Trying to raise more money, raise more revenue, raise more taxes, and mainly on the commercial side. Why? It's like when you run your house. We don't have the money. Right? Do I feel bad? Yes. Okay? We don't have the money. It really just comes down to money. And that's the only way I can really answer your question is why? It comes down to money. It comes down to money. It comes down to hard choices. Okay? And you think you're going to walk out of this room tonight and say this budget is final. No, there's another hearing. And there's more opportunities to talk about it. There's opportunities for the counselors to try to, if I could figure out a different way to do it so this nice young lady, Erin, could stay, I would do that. Or if someone in this room could give me another solution and say, you know what, cut, $60,000 from the trash pickup, and if that was possible, okay? Great, fine, then Erin stays. But everyone's coming up and they're asking for something, and we have less money. And no one's coming up and saying, hey, do this instead and we can keep this. I'm trying to answer your question, and like Councilor O'Keefe said, I'm not going to be able to answer your question. I'm trying to give you all the things that go through my head. So I'm sorry. It's the best I can give you.
Well, I'll let it go, but I still don't think you're understanding my question. And it all has to do with revenue funds. And if you're using all of the cable revenue funds to help ease the budget. I understand that, but I know that you've used 40 from the revenue fund to help ease the budget. I'm just asking that you use the revenue fund to fund this position, because it's not coming out of the budget, and that if you need more from that revenue fund to save some other positions, then I, as a subscriber and as that is taxed to me, that you do that, because these are trying situations. That's all I ask.
I understand.
Thank you. Okay, I had Pat was next, unless you, I'll go to you, Dottie.
I can't tell whether you're raising your hand or not, so Dan has a question too.
Pat Vitale, 75 Mammoth Road. This position, I was with the studio for over 12 years before I left. I'm contemplating on going back again. During those 12 years, I learned every single solitary position except for writer in that studio. When there was problems, sometimes they couldn't get a hold of anybody. I came in and worked on the head end so people could have TV. They could watch the local channels and stuff. There are counselors here, and prior counselors have used the studio to produce shows, go online for special meetings for the town. Who does the shows? Volunteers. You compare Londonderry to other places where there's 2 people. How many other towns in Massachusetts, in New Hampshire, or across the USA, and I've been to the regional meetings where I've talked to people across the country, they all are flabbergasted how many volunteers we have on an active list. Over 200 people, more than 200 people. You can't compare that. No other town has that. But every one of them is trained by the training coordinator. It's Aaron or somebody else before that. Over the 20 years that with the studio being over in school, the studio has taught more children than the school has when it came to media positions. And if you get rid of the position, you might as well close down, completely close down public access. It was mentioned that in 1999, the town council at that time passed a resolution, I think it's a resolution, to change the breakdown from 3 to 2, the 5%, and the 5% goes to the studio and to be used only by the studio. Since the last 3 years, you guys have taken out $40,000 a year out of that reserve fund. Why have a council when 5 or 6 years later and there was nothing, it was done by a budget process, there was nothing to change that resolution. No one had a vote. Did you guys vote on it? In a public meeting to change that percentage back to whatever you got to change now? Now you want to eliminate a position of $65,000. I know where that position is going to go. You're going to take this $65,000 and now it's over $100,000 that you're going to be used to help budget your budget. But you're going to lose a heck of a lot more. Aaron has worked with 2 autistic kids. One of them has already put on a show. And that kid was excited. He did something. Now, I don't know if anybody here or the town have autistic kids, but you give autistic kids to do something and make them proud of it. What are you going to tell that kid next time? I'm sorry, we can't do it. Because you guys got rid of a position that is completely paid by 85% of the town. 15% of the town does not pay cable fees. So I feel that, and this was brought up in 1999, I feel I'm being taxed twice. By my real estate tax and you guys taking out of the cable fee. I know times are hard. I'm a senior. I live on Social Security and a small pension. I haven't seen a raise in 2 years, and I'm not going to see a raise this year. So I'm tight for funds too. But you're going to lose a lot more by getting rid of this position, and I know a lot of kids who've gone through and have gone through college, have gone through the fields. I know one who started at the studio, went through the high school classes, went to Emerson College, and now is out in the field, all because it started here. How many dreams of kids are you going to think? She works with kids during the summertime. She's training the kids, and she's training the adults too. What are you going to do? You're going to get rid of the position so you can take $65,000? I'd rather have you take the $65,000 out of the fee if you're going to continue taking money out of it, then get rid of the position. It's still $65,000. But I can tell you right now, you keep on taking $100,000 a year, that fund is going to last about 4 or 5 years. Because you're going to be taking out more than what is brought in. And like Dennis Martin says, sooner or later, the FCC is going to change. It's been in the winds when I was at the studio five years ago. It was in the winds that the federal FCC wants to get rid of the franchise fees. And then what do? We come back here, now the town completely has to support the studio. Or do we close the studio completely down? No education channel, no government channel, no public access. As I say, don't remove this position. You're going to lose a lot more than what you're going to gain. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Dan and then
Mr.
Dottie.
Chair?
Dottie, come on.
If you don't mind, and I mean this in the right light, you requested 3 minutes, and I think it would be nice to provide a friendly reminder, otherwise we are never going to finish tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to-
I did begin this, yes, please come up. I'm going to go to Dan, and then I'm going to go to you. But please, let's keep, we're hearing a lot of and I understand this is an emotional issue. We began this with that. Councilor Dolan began this whole budget hearing with a reminder that there's going to be some emotional conversations tonight. So please, understand that this isn't boundless. So, Dan?
I actually have 2 quick questions, and it in no way reflects how I feel one way or the other thing about it. I'm just trying to understand. Anybody can use the cable center, right?
Yes.
Whether they have cable or not.
Yes.
And it's my understanding, and maybe
You can have
Dave...
people use it that don't have TV.
Excellent. And what I don't understand is I don't understand how the fee thing works now. If there was absolutely no cable access center, would you still collect revenue?
Yes. The cable, and Dottie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Comcast charges a 5% fee on every cable bill in this town. In fact, that's
So pretty much in every town, everywhere, right?
television access.
It's different percentages in different towns.
Right, so you get...
Negotiate the percentage.
So we
5%
might get a
is
larger
the max.
percentage because we have a cable center.
It made it easier to negotiate for the full customer.
That's all I was curious. I just don't understand.
Does that answer your question, Dan?
Yes, yeah.
What I wanted to do is see if I
Can
could...
you state your name,
Dottie
please?
Grover, Mammoth Road, and the cable director. What I wanted to do is see if I could possibly try and remove some of the cloudiness from the revenue and not firing the person and keeping the money and all of this sort of thing. When I started the budget process this year, I checked and I discovered that we had about $500,000 in our special reserve fund. When I develop my budget, I develop it based on what is necessary for the facility and all of the things that we do. I don't base it on how much money is coming in or anything like that. And over the years, because we have that special revenue fund, what I've been able to do is actually, if I have a budget for $280, because when I built the budget, that's what I thought the cameras were going to cost, and they came in $4,000 less, I could take that $4,000 and it would remain in the reserve fund, and later on we could use a large amount to do a big project in 1 year, which we've done several times, some for the school district and some for the town. But right now, with that $500,000 sitting there, there's some things that happen with that revenue fund every year.
One, you've heard some of these before, but one is that every year we've been giving the school district a $7,500 grant to support the things that they do for their Leo 21. We don't know exactly how they use it, but we give it to them, and that's the end of that. We've also started up the students that were coming into the cable center. We gave them a $20,000 startup grant so that they would have money to go out and get the equipment they needed. I'm not going to go through everything that we've done for other people, but the bottom line is that every year for the last 3 years, we have been putting $40,000 into the general fund, or you have been putting it in when you vote on the budget. And this year, for example, I forget which one of you, but said the budget for the cable center was $301,000. It's not. $301,000 includes the $40,000 transfer from the revenue fund into the general fund. I have no objection to that. I know how much you need money, and I know how hard you've all worked to try and put this budget together, and I know the effort that Dave and Sue have had to put into it because the revenues are low. But with that $500,000 sitting there, just sitting there, and the $40,000 going into the budget, that's still $460,000 sitting there. It made sense to me, and obviously to some others, that Erin's position for the training coordinator for salary and benefits would be approximately $65,000. We can give you, out of the revenue fund, $65,000. You get your 65, you get your 40, that's your 105,000 that Dave needed to meet his goal, and you haven't had to lose a job. And you haven't had to stop a service. We're not talking about diminishing a service, we're talking about eliminating it. Without a training coordinator, there is no public access, because it is the volunteers that run the program, and they have to be trained. So that would be a very straightforward solution. I'm sitting back there tonight, and I'm thinking, okay, and I want you to take another $20,000 to put the call firefighters back in there, and all those things are very important, and those are safety, and those are things that happen in my community. And if you decided that that's something that you needed to do, I would have no problem with that. What I don't understand, and what I think Ms. Eaton was trying to say to you, is what do we accomplish by taking $65,000 out of the budget portion and eliminating a position versus taking the $65,000 out of the revenue portion and not losing a position? And I think that's what people have been asking me. I don't understand, and I tell them I don't understand either. And I don't think that it's a matter of, like someone had said, that Dave was just trying to make it even so everybody hurts a little. I don't think that's it at all. But I do not understand the rationale, and I think that we can do it and give the money that's necessary to keep this budget at level funding from last year the way you needed to do for the tax rate. And you could even take more if you needed to. Some people are going to be upset about that because they do feel very strongly that that money should be dedicated, but people feel strongly about things all the time, and they get done anyway. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I hope that that helps a little bit with the understanding and takes some of the emotion out of it, because it is very emotional for all of these people who are looking at getting their jobs cut or diminished. So I hope that helped.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there has been a lot of emotional testimony tonight, some very compelling testimony, not only the cable studio, but other departments as well. On the cable studio issue, I think that some of the frustration that I think that not only are we, I mean, some of the emotion not only that we're seeing but also displaying is frustration that we're as a council getting ready to put a budget, this is a budget recommendation to the voters who will vote on it at town meeting. As we put together this recommendation, we find ourselves looking in the cupboard and finding the cupboard empty, and so we're scrambling and looking real hard and feeling a bit frustrated not to be able to find the resources for several of these issues that are coming before us. So I think that the compelling testimony, I only can speak for myself, but I think it goes without saying that the testimony that we've heard, when it comes time at the end of this process to vote on what we're going to send forward as a recommendation to the town, that we will indeed consider the testimony that you've given us, extensively. And as I think Councilor Brown pointed out, there is another, or whoever pointed out, there's another session like this where we'll continue the testimony. Remember what I said earlier in the session is that we're in the listening phase right now, listening to you folks and listening to the folks who'll come to the next meeting. So it's not falling on deaf ears, and we're hearing you. And I look across to my right and my left, and we're all making notes as to what you're saying. So please don't be frustrated. We are listening. We are assimilating what you're telling us, and we will take it into consideration when it comes time to vote on the final budget that we recommend to the voters. So.
If you don't sound sufficient, you can watch it on TV or on demand.
There you go. Thank you.
Before I go to Al, just, to kind of stress the point there that, we will take everything that's being asked of us into consideration. You may not like our answers and everything, but we will take it into consideration. But I think this council was pretty clear on its goal to keep the tax rate flat. And we've heard a lot of testimony tonight about things that need to go back in, but not a lot about other things we could cut. So we have a lot of hard decisions to make, whether to relax our goal or to continue our goal, which is what I hope we do. And there's going to be some tough decisions that we have to make. So just keep that in mind. But, I don't want to diminish what people are saying. I mean, you bring up some very, very good points. Some things maybe we didn't consider. And maybe we'll have to consider whether we shuffle around those priorities differently. And maybe we won't. All right, but the point is your testimony is valid. We're listening very carefully, but ultimately on February 3rd, I think it is, Dave, that's the day we need to submit the budget so that it could be published to go to town meeting on March 12th. So, Al?
Yeah, Al Baldessau, 41 Hall Road. I wanted to touch on a few areas here, first of all. First of all, for me, it's not emotional. For me, it's doing the right thing, what's proper, a tax, a fee. Here in the state, we have many fees that we charge, and somebody brought it up earlier about fish and game, okay, on a fishing license. That money there that comes in from fish and game that goes into the state is designed to maintain our lakes and everything else and restock our fish. Just like certain plates, that there's certain fees, that money's designed in the certain fees that go into certain areas. This is about, with me, right and wrong. Okay, this is about, there's a fee that I'm paying on my 5% fee, whatever it is, on my bill, that by right, I supported it years ago of building that cable studio. I supported years ago on putting that equipment in and training kids before my kids ever even knew what it was about, okay, until they started using it. I supported seeing that we maintain that, and I was so happy the school was teaching kids. But the bottom line is, I am paying something totally separate from my tax rate on my property to the fee. Now, my question, I heard that's a $280,000 budget for the cable studio. Is that true? That's their budget. Okay, the reason why I'm asking that question, I wrote a number down here. I see here the current was 376 and proposed is 301. If it's 301, how do they lose a position if that position's 65,000 and their budget is 280 and that covers that position? How does that position go away?
The reduction is $75,000, which
I see
includes
that.
some nominal reductions Dottie made, plus the position which I made.
Okay, but now, didn't I hear Dottie say that her budget with that was 280,000?
I believe the current one is.
The current one is?
That's right.
So now it's gonna go up to 301.
That's right, and the 301 currently includes the $40,000 transfer, which we've been doing historically for the last couple, 3 years.
Right. Okay, so that 301, so her budget actually coming up is not 280? I mean, right now, I'm looking at the numbers here. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist. I don't have a calculator, but when I look at numbers 301, that's for fiscal year 12, and she says up here, a budget is 280. There's a $20,000 somewhere there.
Al, I'm going by the number that's on here, that's 301, it's 491.
Right, that's what I'm going by. When I heard
Where the
Dottie,
280 came from, this is the number we're looking at.
okay, so the 301. But and that will not cover, because I asked Dottie that question, that's why I'm wondering here. That 301 will not cover that position?
We don't have the details of every, and we're not going to go through that now.
I mean, but it's a shame
Of
that we're
every line
doing a
item
budget,
in the,
and we're discussing this here, and I'm just wondering how, with those three people in there, it's over 300, that'll cover that.
Right, the budget is 301, which includes a $40,000 transfer currently to the general fund. That leaves $260,000.
There's a $20,000, okay.
And included in the 260 is the salary for two
Okay.
personnel, benefits, and also other costs, including some capital.
That's all
and,
included?
That's correct.
Okay. So then okay. Well, the bottom line is, like I said, what's right and wrong here, this is a fee. I mean, I support taking money out, and if needed, to go to the budget, they'd offset. But I don't support a cut in that thing there, because we're paying it totally separate from the tax rate. So like I said, it's not emotional, because I vote the same way on a tax versus a fee at the State House on what's right and, what we put in place. And we chose to put that building there, pay for all that equipment. Now, it'd be a shame where that money's coming from a different funding area to shut it down.
thank you. Richard Walensky, this one?
Richard Belinsky, 89 Hall Road. I just want to leave at one thing I'd like to get an answer for the next meeting. First of all, I don't think you should cut it. I think I made that perfectly clear at the beginning. It's self-funded. There's been, as I've been saying, there's money that's been taken out over the last few years for all kinds of reasons. And I'm probably the wrong person to be saying this, because I'm a hothead. But I'm sure when you guys make a vote, you want it to be respected. Then you need to explain to me by the next meeting why I should respect what you're doing, which I think is morally wrong, when in 1999, there was a vote taken, a resolution, whatever, by the council that was passed 5-0 to leave that 5% in there, totally for the cable studio. And in 10, 11 years, that has not been changed. You haven't brought it up and said, well, gee, things are going on, we need to change it. I don't know how you could expect me to respect what you're doing when you're not respecting the vote of a prior council and haven't done anything to change it.
Mr. Chairman? Could we just ask town manager to give us a little research on that?
I have no idea what that
1999
resolution
resolution.
said.
That's when we were, if I remember right, we were given 3%, the town at that time, I think, was taking 3% for the general fund and 2% was
right.
left for the cable.
Let's let him research.
Let's let him research that.
I have no
What I'd
idea
like
what
to see is if that was a resolution or if that was just part of the annual budget for that year.
Sure.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman? I think.
Yes, well, I was going to say something first.
Go ahead.
All
I
right.
think I know what you're gonna
It's
say.
11:15, and we still have more public testimony to take on cable, I think. I think there's more people looking to talk. All right. We also have a non-public we need to go into for a very important reason, which I can't disclose here. So we could continue to eat away at this, or we could finish our discussion on the cable studio and then keep going. I'd like to get an idea from the council on what you guys want to do.
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that we complete the testimony in the cable studio up until 11 o'clock and conclude the public session at 11 or at the conclusion of the cable comments, whichever is first, and then move to non-public and continue the public session to our next meeting.
I'd second that.
I completely agree. It's unhealthy to stay this late.
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request that you just ask for a raise of hands of how many more people want to talk about cable, just so we can get an idea.
Anyone, who else would like to speak from the public regarding the cable budget? 1,
Who hasn't spoken?
Who hasn't
before?
spoken yet?
Yeah,
We're
let's
going to go
do
to you
that,
first.
Mr. Chairman.
And then we'll go, you? And anybody who's spoken, we have one person who hasn't spoken yet. Anyone who's spoken would like to speak again? Mr. Martin? Oh, yeah. Well, no, I'm going to go to her first, and then I'll go to you. All right? So let's do that, and then we'll go, either, once these two people finish their comments,
That's it.
we're going to conclude. I'm going to come back to the Council and Budget Committee, any final questions, and then we're going to continue from there.
My
and
name is Debbie Courier, 128 Old Derry Road. I'm a long time, probably longest time volunteer with the Cable Department, and I would just like you to urge you to reconsider this position. She's invaluable, and she makes such a difference. I know your job is difficult, and thank you for all the time and thought you put into it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Martin?
Dennis Mott, 182 Pillsbury Road. Real quick, is there going to be another hearing on this to talk
Will
about this
be a
more?
public hearing on the 17th, and then there's one more on the 3rd.
And when do you guys go to vote for this?
And at the end of the 3rd, if we have to stay here till 6 o'clock in the morning, we have to, because by law, we have to have the budget.
Oh, I don't think Council Farrell will make it.
They can wake me up to vote.
He looks like he's ready to
There
fall
is,
asleep.
this isn't your last opportunity to comment on
Okay,
it.
real quick, I guess my thinking is, if whatever happens, if that this access station does shut down, remember these cameras shut down with it, and I think we have 5 cable. Don't we have 5 cable stations? We have 5 cable stations. So, again, I feel that this is more or less taking away freedom of speech versus more than taking away a job. It's taking away freedom of speech if you take away the cable. And I'm going to bed, so you guys can stay up. Good night.
Thank you. Okay, final comments from the council? Mike?
Yeah, not a comment, a question. If Dottie could bring to the next meeting when this position came to be, because it didn't always exist. When did it come to be? And how did the cable studio handle training prior to this position being in effect? That would be very helpful.
Al? Please. All right, so Dave, if you could follow up with Dottie to get that information. Anyone else from the council? I'll just make some closing comment that, Dave, it kind of came across that, Dave presented this to us and we accepted it. So this isn't just, I didn't want it to sound like we were throwing the town manager under the bus. The town manager presented this to the town council.
Like that hasn't happened before.
But I want to make it clear that,
Hey, thanks for screwing that up, Paul.
well, then maybe you 4, but I'll throw myself under the bus with Dave, because it was presented to me and I accepted it, so. Budget Committee?
Well, we're pretty good at taking the blame for things, so.
Well, it went to the whole franchise fee issue here, because it seemed there was a perception, which I had as well, that the franchise fee was something that was fundamentally inviolate. It went not to the general fund, but it went to a special account for which the cable. Yeah, my brain is toasting too. It's late as well for myself. But the went to the cable fund, and it could not be touched by anyone else. I think there was that perception out there, and I think that perception still exists. I think it is important that if that is wrong, that we make very clear that it is wrong. We need some definition that says, hey, this is not the case. Because as I said, I was operating on that assumption as well, and when the first $40,000 came out of it the other year, I know there's a lot of great wailing and gnashing of teeth on that issue. And then it came up again, and now it's come up this time. Again, I think it needs to be clarified. I think that people just need to know what the legal position is. If it is in fact a general fund amount, in other words, it drops into the general fund, and part of it then goes to the cable studio to pay for their function, and the rest of it is left in the general fund, and a portion of it has been allocated to a special maintenance fund in that area, fine, but just let's clarify exactly what it is so we don't have these questions out there floating around.
Dave?
Just very quickly, there is no federal or state requirement to dedicate these funds for any specific purpose, to make it very clear. Okay? Unlike the surcharge, town meeting voted on a motor vehicle permit fee, that goes into a dedicated fund for the drop-off center and recycling of motor vehicle waste. That's a dedicated fund as established by state law. There is no dedicated fund requirement under state or federal law for the franchise fee. The practice in the community has been to put it in the special revenue fund where it still currently goes. More recently, the council and town meeting has embraced transferring some of that to the general fund to help support general operations. Whether that's right or wrong, it's all legal. It's nothing immoral. It's a question of you can take, it's like a motor vehicle permit fee.
Exactly.
Where, it all goes to the general fund. And
We're done.
Janos would love to make the argument that since it's a motor vehicle permit fee, it goes to maintain roads, he should get $5 million in roads every year, road assistance, but that's just not the way it works.
Thank you, David.
Other members of the Budget
I have
Committee?
one question to ask.
Sir, we've already done public comment
A
on this.
statement was made, I want to make a clarification. I'm asking a question on the statement that was made. That's right, it's 5 minutes to 11.
Gave two more people the opportunity to ask.
I wasn't going to come up here and speak until Dave said something.
Do you have a question? Please ask your question, okay?
Thank you. If there's no federal or state law stating that the money has to go into the cable fund, then why have a council when the council voted it in 1999?
Sir, we've
Why
already asked
have
the
that?
town manager to clarify what was done by the prior council. He's already been given that direction. We
Okay.
need to find that out. Once we have that information, then we'll know
Okay.
why that's the case.
Thank you.
Okay?
Chairman, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying
Motion to
aye.
close or
No,
continue?
we
For
can't. We have to continue.
I amend
We
my
have to-
motion to continue the public
We
hearing
have to continue the public hearing to the 17th.
to January 17th at 7 PM.
Point of order, I would amend your motion to continue the public hearing to the 17th and to move into non-public.
Okay, what about the remaining
Want me
business?
to drop the,
Oh, you want to
No,
do some
yeah,
more?
I want to get the other new business.
Sorry. Then I withdraw that.
motion to continue the public hearing to January 17th.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of continuing the public hearing on January 17th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, chair votes affirmative, and we'll continue. All right. Please, folks, if you're going to talk, please step outside. We still have some more business. Dave?
Just one more piece of budget business. It's not a policy decision, but if the council wants to entertain presenting a bond to the voters for the road reconstruction, then we need to have a public hearing on January 17th for a bond hearing on the state law. Having a bond hearing does not obligate you to put a bond on the ballot. However, if you don't have a bond hearing, you cannot put, because you won't have enough time to consider that. So should I advertise for a bond hearing?
Yes.
And then you can make your policy decision at that time.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
please do.
is that a motion you need, or is it a?
Just concurrence, that's all I need.
Concurrence. I think you have concurrence. So we'll advertise that there'll be a bond hearing for the road construction bond on the 17th. Okay, we do have an order. Dave, is this urgent that we need to act on this tonight, or is it something that could wait? So should we approve our minutes for the 20th? And then we could take a motion to go into non-public.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes as posted.
Seconded.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes of 12/20/2010 as posted, and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and we've accepted the minutes of 12/20/2010.
Do you want the new business? We get that order done?
There's no, he said there was no urgency.
doesn't need it?
I make a motion that we postpone the order on the agenda to our next scheduled meeting.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mike. All those in favor of postponing order 2011-01 till next meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, so we will vote on that next meeting. Okay, I also suggest that we suspend our liaison reports and our town manager reports.
You're not going to get those tonight.
So I'll accept the motion to go into non-public.
So moved.